Tonight, we're breaking down every Harry Potter character that has killed somebody. This is a topic with a lot to uncover, but I'll keep my narration calm so you can still drift off to sleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment Night 1. Now back to the video. The wizarding world is often remembered for its sense of wonder, its floating candles, and the cozy warmth of a common room fire. But beneath the surface of the magic and the mystery lies a much darker reality. It is a world defined by a century of conflict, where the ultimate price is paid in blood. When we talk about the characters in Harry Potter who have taken a life, we aren't just talking about a list of names. We are talking about the moments that changed the course of history, the choices that fractured souls, and the heavy burden of survival in a time of war. For some, killing was a tool of terror, a way to reach for an impossible immortality. For others, it was a desperate act of defense, a tragic necessity, or even a final act of mercy. The act of murder in this universe is not just a plot point, it is a metaphysical event. We know that killing rips the soul apart, a concept that sits at the very heart of the story of Lord Voldemort and his Horcruxes. But what about the others? What about the heroes who had to cross that line to save the world? What about the parents who killed to protect their children? Or the tragic figures whose hands were forced by fate? Tonight, we are going to look at every single confirmed instance where a character caused the death of another. We will distinguish between the cold-blooded murders of the Death Eaters and the chaotic casualties of the Battle of Hogwarts. We will look at the direct kills, the commanded executions, and those indirect deaths that still weigh heavily on the characters' legacies. From the most prolific dark wizards to the most unexpected heroes, we are exploring the darkest corners of the canon. Think about the sheer weight of these moments. We remember the green flash of the killing curse, but we often forget the smaller, quieter tragedies that set the wheels in motion decades before Harry Potter was even born. We forget the stories of people like Percival Dumbledore, whose violent reaction to a Muggle attack changed the Dumbledore family forever. We look at figures like Severus Snape, whose most famous act of killing was actually a secret pact of love and loyalty. And we look at Harry himself, a boy who was forced to face the reality of death before he could even understand the magic he possessed. The question of who has killed in the Harry Potter series is more complex than it first appears. Is a character a killer if they act in self-defense? Is a creature like Nagini a murderer, or simply a weapon in the hands of a master? Does the destruction of a memory or a fragment of a soul count as taking a life? As we navigate through the history of the First and Second Wizarding Wars, we will answer these questions by looking at the books, the films, and the deep lore that expands our understanding of these characters. This is a journey through the history of the wizarding world's most significant and somber milestones. It is a look at the cost of power and the price of peace. We will see how some characters were consumed by their violence, while others found a way to remain whole despite the horrors they witnessed and the actions they were forced to take. The shadows in the Forbidden Forest and the corridors of the Ministry of Secrets hold many secrets, but none are as heavy as the lives lost within them. As we begin this deep dive, we start with the figure who looms over every death in the saga, the man who feared death so much that he made it his primary language. We begin with the dark wizard who turned murder into a path toward a hollow eternity, and in doing so, created a generation of killers, survivors, and martyrs. This is the complete account of the lives taken in the struggle for the soul of the magical world. There is a moment in every story where the rules of the world shift, where the stakes become real. In the Harry Potter series, that moment arrives with a single word, a phrase of 3 syllables that sounds almost like a lullaby: Avada Kedavra, the killing curse. Before this, magic was a tool for mischief, for wonder, for turning teacups into gerbils. Children read about flying keys and giant chessboards. But the killing curse changed everything. It told us that this world had a final answer, a weapon with no defense, no counter, no mercy. It told us that in this story, people could die, and they did. But what does it mean to kill in a world of magic? What happens to the soul when the hand that casts the spell is the one that ends a life? The wizarding world is surprisingly quiet on this question. It gives us rules for everything else. The rules of wand law, the rules of transfiguration, the rules of time travel. But the mechanics of murder, the spiritual weight of taking a life, that is left for us to feel, to infer, to carry in the silence between the pages. This is the weight of a soul, and it is a heavy thing to hold, because in this world, murder is not just a crime, it is a fracture. It is the act that splits a soul, that creates a Horcrux, that binds a wizard to the earth in a way that is not quite living and not quite dead. Voldemort understood this. He used murder as a tool, as a currency, as the very foundation of his immortality. He killed to tear himself apart, to store pieces of himself in objects, to cheat death by becoming something less than human. But the series never shows us what that felt like. It never shows us the moment the soul cracks. We only see the aftermath, the hollow eyes, the empty throne, the man who cannot love because he has never learned what it costs to lose. So when we talk about every character that has killed somebody, we are not just counting bodies, we are tracing the fractures. We are asking who carried the weight, who let it go, and who was destroyed by it. And that is why we need to be careful with our definitions, because not every kill in this series is a murder, not every death is a choice. There are direct kills where the character raises the wand and speaks the word. There are commanded kills where the order is given and the hand obeys. And there is the indirect tier, the grey space, where a character sets events in motion and a death follows like a shadow. This is not a court of law. This is a deep dive into the lore, into the story, into the moments that shaped the wizarding world. And the first thing we need to understand is that the killing curse is not just a spell. It is a boundary. Before Avada Kedavra, children's literature had death, but it was often gentle, it was off-screen. It was a character fading into a sunset, a hero falling in a final battle that we only heard about. But the killing curse is not gentle. It is instant, it is absolute. It leaves no wound, no mark, no chance for last words. The victim simply stops. They fall, and the life is gone before they hit the ground. This changed the stakes for an entire generation of readers. We could no longer pretend that magic was safe. We could no longer pretend that the heroes would always walk away, because the killing curse does not care who you are. It does not care if you are good. It does not care if you are brave. It only cares if you are in its path. And that is what makes the weight of a soul so terrifying, because in this world, anyone can kill. The curse can be spoken by anyone. It does not require skill. It does not require power. It requires only intent. And that is the scariest part of all. So when we look at the characters who have killed, we are not just looking at villains. We are looking at people who had the intent, people who made the choice, people who, in a single moment, decided that someone else had to stop living. And that is a very different kind of story. Now, the first and most obvious anchor in this conversation is Lord Voldemort. He is the center of the death toll. He is the reason the war exists. He is the reason the series has a body count at all. Every other killer in the main saga is either acting for him, acting against him, or acting in response to his shadow. Voldemort's murders are not just numbers. They are the foundation of the plot. He killed James and Lily Potter to fulfill a prophecy. He killed Cedric Diggory to complete his resurrection. He killed Gregorovitch to steal the secret of the Elder Wand. He killed Grindelwald to silence the last witness to his power. He killed Barty Crouch Sr. to erase a threat. He killed Snape through Nagini to break the final resistance. And those are just the ones we see. His early life is a trail of bodies. He killed his father and his grandparents to create his first Horcrux. He killed a girl named Myrtle Warren, just a student, just a girl in a bathroom, to test the power of the basilisk. He killed the Riddle family housekeeper, the old man who took him in, the people who stood between him and the legacy he wanted. He killed without hesitation, without remorse, without even the pretense of guilt, because Voldemort did not feel the weight. He had no soul to carry. He had split it so many times that the burden was gone, that the act of murder became as simple as breathing, and that is the tragedy of his character. He is the ultimate killer because he is the ultimate empty. He has no love, no loyalty, no grief. He only has ambition, and ambition, when it is not anchored by a soul, is a very dangerous thing. But Voldemort is not the only one who killed, and he is not the only one who felt the weight. Let us talk about Bellatrix Lestrange. Bellatrix is the opposite of Voldemort in one crucial way. She feels everything. She feels joy when she kills. She feels pleasure when she hurts. She is not empty. She is full of a dark, screaming devotion that makes her more dangerous than any other Death Eater. She killed Sirius Black in the Department of Mysteries, and she did it with a laugh. She killed Dobby with a thrown knife, and she did it with a sneer. She is the character who makes murder personal. She does not just end lives, she enjoys the ending. And that is a different kind of fracture, because Bellatrix's soul is not split. She is not making Horcruxes. She is not trying to live forever. She is just trying to serve, to prove, to be the one that the Dark Lord trusts. And in that service, she becomes a monster. But she is a monster with a face, with a voice, with a loyalty that is terrifyingly real. She is the example of what happens when a soul is not destroyed, but twisted. Then there is Peter Pettigrew. Wormtail is the coward. He is the one who hides, who shrinks, who betrays his friends to save his own skin. But he also kills. He kills Cedric Diggory in the graveyard, and he does it with Voldemort's order, but he does it. He is the hand that casts the curse. He is the one who holds the wand, and that makes him a killer, even if he is a killer who cries, who trembles, who begs for mercy. Because the weight of a soul does not care about cowardice, it only cares about the act. And Wormtail's act is the one that brings Voldemort back. It is the one that starts the final war. It is the one that makes the series real again. So he counts. He counts even if he does not want to. Now we come to the complicated ones. Severus Snape. Snape kills Albus Dumbledore on the astronomy tower. It is one of the most shocking moments in the series. The good headmaster, the wise old man, falls from the tower, and the hand that pushes him is the hand of the man we thought was the enemy. But then we learn. We learn that Dumbledore was already dying. We learn that he asked for this. We learn that Snape's act was not murder, but mercy, not betrayal, but sacrifice. And that is the weight, because Snape carries it. He carries the guilt of that moment for the rest of his life. He carries the knowledge that he killed the man he respected, that he ended the life of the only person who believed in him. And he does not get to say it. He does not get to explain. He just has to live with it, in silence, in shadow, until the very end. Snape is the best example of a killer who is not a villain. He is a killer who is a hero, and that is the grey space that makes the wizarding world so rich. Then there is Nagini. Nagini is a snake. She is a Horcrux. She is a living weapon. She kills Severus Snape at Voldemort's command, and it is a brutal death, a death in the dark, a death that comes from the fangs of the thing Voldemort loves most. But Nagini is not a person. She is an animal, a creature, a piece of a soul, and that makes her kill strange, because it is not a choice. It is instinct, it is obedience, but it is still a death, and it is still a moment that changes the story. Now we come to the heroes, Harry Potter. Harry's first kill is Quirinus Quirrell. It happens in the first book in the first year, when Harry is just a boy. Quirrell is burning. He is being consumed by the touch of Harry's skin, by the protection of his mother's love, by the power of a soul that Voldemort cannot bear. And Quirrell dies. He dies because Harry is too pure to touch, too good to hold. And that is a strange kill. It is not intentional. It is not a curse. It is just a consequence. But it is still a kill. And many fans count it. Harry also destroys the basilisk. He kills the diary of Voldemort. He kills the fragment of a soul that is trying to live again. But those are not human kills. They are not the same weight. And in the final battle, Harry does not kill Voldemort. Voldemort kills himself. His own curse rebounds. His own magic turns against him. And he falls because he cannot accept that he has lost. So Harry's kill count is small, but it is important, because it shows that even the hero can carry the weight. Then there is Neville Longbottom. Neville kills Nagini. He does it with the sword of Gryffindor, the blade of his own house, the weapon that was meant for him. He beheads the snake, the last Horcrux, the final piece of Voldemort's soul. And in that moment, Neville is not just a student, he is a warrior. He is the one who ends the war. He is the one who makes Voldemort mortal again. And that is a heroic kill. It is a kill that saves the world. It is a kill that does not fracture a soul, but strengthens it. And then there is Molly Weasley. Molly kills Bellatrix Lestrange in the Battle of Hogwarts. She does it because Bellatrix threatens her daughter, because she is a mother, because she will not let anyone hurt her child. And it is one of the most satisfying moments in the entire series. A mother, a housewife, a woman who has spent the whole series in the background, steps forward and destroys one of the most dangerous killers in the world. And that is the weight of a soul, because Molly's soul is not broken. It is full. It is full of love, of protection, of the kind of fury that only comes from caring. And that is what makes her kill different. It is not murder. It is defense. It is the final stand. Now we have to talk about the ones that are not in the main story. Percival Dumbledore. Percival is Albus's father. He killed 3 muggles. He killed them because they attacked his daughter, because they hurt Ariana, because they broke something in her that could never be fixed. And he was sent to Azkaban for life. He died there. He left his family in shame, in silence, in the shadow of a crime that was not really a crime. Because Percival's kill is the one that started everything. It is the one that made Albus who he is. It is the one that made Dumbledore the man who would not trust himself with power. And that is the weight. Because Percival's soul was not fractured by murder. It was fractured by grief, by the knowledge that he could not protect his daughter, that he could only avenge her. And that is a different kind of fracture. It is the kind that leaves a scar. So where does that leave us? We have the ultimate killer, we have the sadistic killer, we have the cowardly killer, we have the merciful killer, we have the heroic killer, we have the maternal killer, we have the tragic killer, and we have the killer who is not even a person. They all carry the weight, but the weight is different for each of them, and that is what makes this series so powerful, because it does not tell us that killing is simple. It does not tell us that killing is always evil. It tells us that killing is a choice, and that the choice changes the person who makes it. And that is the weight of a soul. It is the thing that cannot be undone. It is the thing that cannot be forgotten. It is the thing that every character in this series has to live with, even the ones who do not know they are carrying it. And that is what we are going to explore in this series, because every character that has killed somebody has a story, and we are going to tell them. But first, we have to go back. We have to go to the beginning. We have to go to the moment when the first soul was split, when the first murder was committed, when the first Horcrux was made. We have to go to Tom Riddle's first blood, because that is where it all started. That is where the weight began. And that is the story we will tell next. The weight of murder, as we discussed in the previous chapter, isn't just a legal matter in the wizarding world, it's a spiritual fracture. A single killing can tear the soul apart, and that is exactly where Tom Riddle's story begins. Not with a grand battle or a dark tower, but with a quiet, almost forgotten house on a hill in Little Hangleton. The Riddle house was a mansion of old money and hard silence. The Riddle family, Tom Riddle Sr., his wife Mary, and his father Thomas, lived behind locked gates, resented by the village for their wealth and their coldness. They were not beloved, they were not mourned, and on the night of their death, no one heard a thing. A gardener discovered them the next morning. They were seated in the dining room, undisturbed in posture, untouched by any visible wound, yet they were dead. All 3 of them. The local authorities, both Muggle and magical, were baffled. The bodies bore no signs of poison, no curse residue, no struggle. It was as if life had simply been drained from them. The Ministry of Magic sent an investigator, and the case went cold quickly. The only suspect was a strange, reclusive man named Morfin Gaunt, who lived in a shack at the edge of the village. He had a known hatred for the Riddle family and had been heard boasting about killing muggles. When questioned, Morfin confessed to the murders, but his confession was slurred, confused, and his memory of the night was a fog. He was sentenced to Azkaban, and the case was closed. But the truth was far darker. Less than a week before the murders, a boy had visited Morfin Gaunt's shack, a boy with dark hair, a pale face, and a charisma that could freeze a room. His name was Tom Riddle, and he was the son of the very man who had abandoned his mother. He had come to learn about his heritage, to claim his inheritance, and to silence the past. Tom used his charm to extract stories from Morfin about the family, about Salazar Slytherin, about the gaunt ring with its black stone. Then, he stunned the old man, stole the ring, and took his wand. He returned to the Riddle house under cover of darkness. He walked into that dining room, and with Morfin's wand, he cast the killing curse 3 times, one after another. No struggle, no sound, just the cold precision of a teenager who had already decided that murder was just a tool. He didn't stop there. Tom staged the scene to implicate Morfin, carefully planting the older wizard's wand at the scene and modifying his memory to confess. The Ministry never questioned the narrative. A half-blood boy from a Muggle orphanage was not even a blip on their radar. Morfin Gaunt rotted in Azkaban, and Tom Riddle walked away with a ring that would become his first Horcrux. That night in the Riddle house was not just a triple homicide. It was a ritual, the killing of the father who had rejected him, the grandparents who had never known him. It was a symbolic severing. It was Tom Riddle's first blood, and he used it to split his soul for the first time. The act of murder, as we know from the mechanics of the magical world, is required to create a Horcrux, but the ritual also demands a specific, intentional darkness. Tom did not kill in rage. He killed in order to conquer death. He killed to prove that he was above the ordinary rules of magic and mortality. The creation of that first Horcrux inside the Gaunt ring was a cold, calculating act. He took the soul fragment and sealed it into the stone, ensuring that even if his body were destroyed, he would not truly die. But the cost was immediate. His face, once handsome, began to shift. His eyes took on a red glint. The humanity in him started to thin. Every murder after that would make him less and less human, but this first one was the foundation. And that foundation was built on lies. A framed man in Azkaban. A family erased from memory. A house that would stand empty for decades, haunted only by the echo of those 3 curses. The wizarding world had no idea that a 17-year-old boy had just become the most dangerous dark wizard in a century. The Riddle House murders were Tom Riddle's first blood, but they were far from his last. The next kill would come soon, and it would be even quieter, even more invisible. It would happen inside Hogwarts itself, in a bathroom that no one wanted to visit, and the victim would be a girl who never even knew she was in danger. That story, that is the martyrdom of Myrtle Warren. We left Tom Riddle standing in the shadow of the Riddle house, having just committed his first triple homicide with a coldness that would define his entire existence. But that murder, as monstrous as it was, served a purpose: to test his power, to frame an innocent man, and to claim his first Horcrux. Yet for all its brutality, that crime remained external to Hogwarts. Riddle was still a student, still operating on the fringes of the wizarding world. It would take another death, a seemingly insignificant one, to truly bind him to the school itself. And that death belonged to a girl who, in life, was barely noticed. Her name was Myrtle Warren, a shy, bespectacled girl with a tendency to cry in the bathroom when the teasing became too much. She was the kind of student who slipped through the cracks of Hogwarts' bustling corridors, a background character in everyone else's story. But in 1943, she became the centerpiece of a cold case that would remain unsolved for 50 years. Her death was recorded as a freak accident, a tragic mystery. But when you re-examine it through the lens of cold case investigation, every detail points to a carefully orchestrated murder, one that exploited a loophole in magical law. Myrtle was killed inside a second-floor girls' bathroom, a place that later generations would know as the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. The official story at the time was that she had been petrified, then died from shock. In reality, she was killed by the Basilisk of Slytherin, a giant serpent whose gaze is instantly lethal. But here is the crucial technicality. The Basilisk did not act on its own. It was not a wild beast. It was controlled, commanded by Tom Riddle, who at that point had discovered the chamber and learned to speak Parseltongue. The killing curse was not used. Avada Kedavra was not cast. Instead, Riddle used the Basilisk as a weapon, a proxy for murder. In legal terms, this is what Muggle law enforcement would call a commanded kill. Riddle did not physically touch Myrtle. He did not whisper a spell. He simply told the serpent to hunt. The Basilisk, being a creature of immense loyalty to the heir of Slytherin, obeyed without question. The result was a death that left no magical trace on Riddle's wand, no obvious curse mark on the victim. It was the perfect crime because it bypassed the standard investigative tools of the Ministry. Aurors looked for dark magic residue, for witness accounts, for any sign of a duel. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. A monster had killed a girl, and the monster had vanished into the walls. But why Myrtle? Why that bathroom? The answer lies in the nature of Horcruxes. Riddle needed another soul fragment to secure his immortality. The first Horcrux, the diary, had been created from the murder of his father and grandparents. But a Horcrux is not merely a container, it is an anchor. To bind his soul to Hogwarts itself, Riddle needed a death that happened within the school's grounds. A death that would taint the very stones of the castle. Myrtle's murder was not random, it was strategic. By killing her inside Hogwarts, Riddle linked his soul to the institution he intended to control forever. The bathroom became a permanent scar, a place where the boundaries between life and death frayed, and that is why Myrtle did not move on. She became the ghost known as Moaning Myrtle, trapped in the exact spot where she died. That is not typical for most witches and wizards. Ghosts are usually those who fear death, who cling to the world out of unfinished business or terror. Myrtle's unfinished business was the injustice of her death. She never knew who killed her, only that she opened her eyes and saw two enormous yellow orbs, and then everything ended. Her spirit remained, haunting the plumbing, crying in the stalls, a constant reminder of a crime that no one would solve until a boy named Harry Potter arrived. Riddle, meanwhile, used the suspicions surrounding Myrtle's death as a tool. He framed Rubeus Hagrid, a gentle half-giant who kept a pet, a Cromantula, in the castle. The Ministry, eager to close the case, arrested Hagrid and sent him to Azkaban. Riddle even received a special award for services to the school. The murder of Myrtle Warren was the hinge upon which the entire First Wizarding War would swing. It allowed Voldemort to anchor his soul to the school itself, to create a Horcrux that would remain hidden in the chamber for decades. And it gave him a cover story that would keep the true nature of the chamber a secret until it was far too late. But there is another death, older and even more tangled in family secrets, that echoes through the Dumbledore lineage. A death that involved 3 Muggles and a father's desperate, violent rage. That story will force us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the Dumbledore family's shadowed past. But a commanded kill, however tragic, is still a murder carried out by another hand. The Basilisk did not choose to attack Myrtle. It was an instrument, a weapon wielded by a 16-year-old boy whose soul had already begun to rot. Tonight, we peel back the layers of a different kind of violence, a violence of the heart, where the line between justice and vengeance blurs into something far more human. We arrive at the Dumbledore family's darkest secret, the hidden wound that defined Albus Dumbledore's entire life, a wound that began not in a castle, but in a quiet valley in the English countryside, with 3 muggles, a frightened girl, and a father who made a choice that would echo through the ages. The tragic catalyst for the Dumbledore family's downfall was not a spell gone wrong, nor a betrayal by a friend. It was a brutal, senseless attack on a child. Ariana Dumbledore, at the tender age of 6, was discovered by 3 muggle boys performing what they would later describe as unnatural tricks. A simple display of accidental magic, the kind any young witch or wizard might show. But these boys were not curious, they were cruel. They cornered Ariana in the woods near their home, and what they did to her was so violent, so psychologically devastating, that it shattered something fundamental inside her. Ariana never fully recovered. She became withdrawn, terrified of her own power, prone to explosive, uncontrollable outbursts of magic that her parents could barely contain. The attack stole her innocence, her trust, and eventually her very sense of self, and it planted a seed of rage in the heart of her father, Percival. Now, the wizarding world has a complicated history with Muggle-on-wizard violence. The International Statute of Secrecy was designed to prevent such confrontations, to keep the magical world hidden from Muggle eyes. But when a child is hurt, when a family's peace is shattered by the cruelty of those who do not understand, the law can feel like an abstract, distant comfort. Percival Dumbledore was not a violent man by nature. He was a gentle father, a respected figure in his community. But the sight of his daughter trembling in a corner, unable to speak, her magic lashing out in fits of terror, broke something inside him. And when he learned the names of the 3 boys who had done this, boys who had grown into young men by the time the case came to light, Percival made a decision that would seal his fate. He did not report them to the ministry. He did not seek justice through the proper channels. He took the law into his own hands, and in an act of brutal retaliation, Percival Dumbledore hunted down each of those 3 muggles and killed them. We do not know the precise method, whether he used a curse, a hex, or simply his bare hands, but the result was absolute. 3 lives ended by a father's wrath. And in that moment, Percival became a murderer in the eyes of the wizarding world. The legal consequences were swift and severe. Percival Dumbledore was arrested, tried, and sentenced to life imprisonment in Azkaban. The ministry did not consider his actions justified, even though the Muggles had committed a heinous crime against a child. The reasoning was simple. The law of the wizarding world forbids the use of magic against Muggles in such a manner, regardless of provocation. Percival's case set a grim precedent, a reminder that even the most righteous anger could not excuse murder, that the justice system would not tolerate vigilantism no matter the motive. But the precedent also carried a darker implication, that the protection of magical children was secondary to the maintenance of secrecy, that a father's love could not outweigh the need to keep the world hidden. Percival never gave a full account of what happened. He refused to explain his actions in court, perhaps out of shame, perhaps out of a desire to protect his daughter from further scrutiny. He died in Azkaban, alone, his soul eroded by Dementors, leaving behind a broken family and a son who would carry the weight of that secret for the rest of his life. Albus Dumbledore, already burdened by his mother Kendra's death in a tragic accident with Ariana's wild magic, was now forced to navigate a world that saw his father as a convict, a violent criminal. The Dumbledore name became synonymous with tragedy, and the truth of what Percival had done and why was buried in the dark, damp cells of Azkaban. And yet, for all the legal condemnation, there is a question that lingers in the shadows of this story. Was Percival Dumbledore truly a sinner, or was he a father pushed to the absolute edge of human endurance? The wizarding world never answered that question. It simply locked him away and moved on. But the effects of that sin rippled outward, shaping a young man who would one day become the greatest wizard of his age, haunted by the knowledge that his father's love had cost him everything. This chapter of the Dumbledore family's history is not just a footnote. It is the origin of Albus's lifelong obsession with redemption, his fear of power, his complicated relationship with truth and secrecy. And it is the reason why, decades later, when the spectre of a new war began to darken the horizon, the choices made by the Dumbledore family would once again echo through the corridors of history. The shadow of that first wizarding war, the one that Percival's actions helped to cast, still loomed, waiting for a new generation to confront its darkness. We've just come from the story of Percival Dumbledore, a man who shattered his own life and his family's reputation in a single act of violent retribution. 3 dead muggles, a lifetime in Azkaban, and a secret that would haunt Albus Dumbledore for decades. That was a personal tragedy, a crime born of rage and protection. But now we step into a different kind of shadow, one that isn't personal at all. It's systematic. It's the shadow of the First Wizarding War, and it's where the body count becomes so staggering that it stops being a list of names and starts being a kind of genocide. The 1970s and early 80s in the wizarding world were not a time of quiet school years and Quidditch matches. They were a war. And unlike the battles in the films, this war was fought in the dark, in the silence of missing persons reports, in the sudden emptiness of family homes. Voldemort's rise didn't just create a few dramatic deaths, it turned an entire generation of former schoolmates into executioners. You have to understand that the people who became Death Eaters were not ancient monsters pulled from some forgotten dungeon. They were the boys and girls who sat in the same classrooms as the Order of the Phoenix. They were the ones who laughed at the same jokes, who studied for the same exams, who might have dated your older brother or your best friend. Then the war came, and the line between friend and killer became invisible. Think about the McKinnons. In the books, they're barely a footnote. Marlene McKinnon was in the Order, and she was killed along with her entire family. That's all we get. But let that sink in for a moment. An entire family. Not a single person in a duel, a whole household, wiped out in a single night. The McKinnons are not a story, they are a statistic. And that's the point. The First Wizarding War was so efficient at erasing people that their names now serve only as evidence of a pattern. The Prewets too, Molly Weasley's brothers, Fabian and Gideon. They were killed, and we know they fought bravely. We know they were outnumbered, but we don't know the details, because the details were lost in the sheer volume of death. 5 Death Eaters took them down, according to the stories. 5. That's not a duel, that's an execution squad. This is the part of the war that the books never show you directly. You see the aftermath, the grieving families, the empty chairs at the burrow, but you don't see the moment when a former schoolmate, someone you once passed a note to in charms class, raises a wand and ends your life because you belong to the wrong side. Voldemort's rise turned the wizarding world into a place where your past didn't protect you. It made you a target. The McKinnons and the Prewets are not just names. They are proof that the war was not a series of heroic last stands. It was a systematic campaign of extermination. Every family that lost someone, every name that appears on that list of the fallen, is a reminder that Voldemort didn't just kill individuals. He killed bloodlines. He killed futures. He killed the possibility of a generation growing up without fear. And this is where the weight of the war becomes almost unbearable. Because the people who did the killing were not strangers. They were the ones who had been sorted into Slytherin with you. They were the ones who had laughed at your jokes in the common room. They were the ones who might have been your friend if the war had never happened. That's the horror of the First Wizarding War. It didn't just create killers, it created executioners out of schoolmates. And the bodies they left behind, the McKinnons, the Prewets, the Bones, the whole long list of the fallen, are not just a memorial. They are a warning that when a war like this comes, the people you trust can become the people who end you. And that brings us to the next chapter. Because the war didn't stop with the McKinnons and the Prewets. It moved on to the most famous name of all, the Potters, and their last stand is about to change everything. The previous chapter left us standing in the shadows of the First Wizarding War, where Voldemort's rise had turned former schoolmates into executioners, and the body count had become so staggering it felt almost abstract. But war, even a magical one, is not fought in abstractions. It is fought in the smallest, most intimate moments. A knock on a door, a flash of green light, a scream that never reaches the neighbours. Tonight, we are going to walk through one of those moments, frame by frame. The night of October 31st, 1981, in the village of Godric's Hollow. The night the Potters made their last stand. Let us set the scene. The cottage sits at the edge of the town, tucked behind a hedge of winter roses. Inside, a young family is asleep. James and Lily Potter, barely out of their teens, have been hiding here for weeks. The Fidelius charm is supposed to protect them. Their secret keeper, Peter Pettigrew, holds the secret of their location. But Peter has already betrayed them. Voldemort knows the address. He does not need to waste time searching. He apparates directly into the hallway, silent as smoke. The first thing you notice if you are watching the sequence unfold is how quick it all is. The door does not crash. The house does not shake. Voldemort moves with the practiced economy of a man who has done this many times before. He knows the layout from Pettigrew's description. The stairs creak once under his weight, and that is the only warning James gets. James Potter is awake in an instant. He does not grab a wand from the nightstand. He left it on the sofa downstairs. Instead, he throws himself toward the bedroom door, shouting for Lily to take Harry and run. There is no time to arm himself, no time to cast a shield. Voldemort enters the room, and James stands between him and the door. He is unarmed. He is already dead. The killing curse strikes him square in the chest. His body crumples backward, and that is the end of James Potter. This is a pure murder in the strictest magical sense. There is no contract, no ritual, no sacrificial loophole. James goes down fighting to protect his family, but he does not make a conscious choice to lay down his life for anyone. He simply tries to block the path of a monster, and the monster removes the obstacle. His death is a straightforward killing. No love-bound magic, no ancient protection triggered. Just a husband and father, caught with his wand out of reach, cut down in the dark. Now the door that James guarded is open. Voldemort steps into the nursery. Lily stands in front of Harry's crib. She does not have her wand either. It is on the dresser, but she knows she cannot match Voldemort in a duel. So she does the only thing she can. She steps between him and her son, spreads her arms and says, "Not Harry, not Harry, please not Harry." Voldemort orders her to stand aside. He tells her she is a witch, that he does not need to kill her, that he will spare her if she moves. But Lily does not move. She does not bargain. She makes a clear, conscious choice to sacrifice her own life in place of her son's. And that is the difference. That is the sacrificial contract. In the magical framework of the world, a freely given, selfless sacrifice of one's own life to save another triggers a powerful ancient protection. It is not spoken of in textbooks because it is nearly impossible to replicate. A mother dying for her child is one of the few acts that can turn a killing curse back on the caster. But the protection only works if the killer gives her the choice. Voldemort did. He said, "Stand aside, you silly girl." She refused, and by refusing, she sealed his fate. The curse hits her. She falls. But the moment she does, the contract is fulfilled. Her love becomes a shield wrapped around Harry's skin. When Voldemort turns his wand on the infant, the curse rebounds. It hits him square in the face, his own spell, reflected back by a power he never understood. The killer becomes his own final victim. But here is the part we rarely dwell on. The rebounding curse does not kill Voldemort outright. It destroys his body, rips his soul apart, sends his spirit fleeing into the wilderness. That is why he spends 13 years as a wraith, and in that moment, the first Horcrux is created without his intention. A fragment of his soul latches onto the only living thing in the room, Harry. The boy who survived becomes the vessel of his enemy's final piece of immortality. So when we talk about who killed James Potter, the answer is simple. Voldemort did. A cold, efficient murder before an unarmed man. But when we talk about who killed Lily Potter, the answer is more complicated. Yes, Voldemort cast the spell, but she chose to accept it. She turned a murder into a sacrifice. And that act, that decision, rewrote the entire war. Godric's Hollow was not a battle. It was a frame-by-frame tragedy where one family's last stand lasted less than 3 minutes. James bought Lily maybe 2 seconds. Lily bought Harry a lifetime. And Voldemort bought himself a death he would spend the next 17 years trying to outrun. That is the moment that made Harry Potter the boy who lived. But it also made him something else. A child who had already seen his first murder before he could walk. The first character in this story to kill somebody was, in a strange way, himself. At least, the version of himself that touched an innocent baby. And the next time we will see that kind of self-destructive magic return, it will not be on a Dark Lord's wand. It will be at the back of a turban, in a classroom full of first years, where a terrified professor will make a choice that turns him into a pile of ash. That is the story of Quirinus Quirrell and the first kill Harry never knew he made. But that is a chapter for another night. We ended the last chapter standing in the ruins of Godric's Hollow, watching the green light fade. We saw James Potter fall without a wand, without a chance. And we saw Lily Potter make a choice that would echo through the entire series. That choice, that ancient magic of sacrifice, left its mark on a 1-year-old boy. It left a scar, and it left a protection so profound that it would eventually claim a life. Not Voldemort's life, not yet, but the life of a man who barely had a name in the story, Quirinus Quirrell. Now, we need to talk about what happened in that underground chamber, in the shadow of the Philosopher's Stone. This is the moment where the moral lines of the entire series start to blur. This is the moment where an 11-year-old boy, a child who had only just learned he was a wizard, becomes responsible for a death. And the question that haunts this entire chapter is simple. Did Harry Potter kill Quirinus Quirrell, or did he simply survive? Let's go back to the beginning of that encounter. Harry, exhausted and terrified, finds himself face to face with the man who has been the quiet, stuttering presence in the staff room all year. Quirrell, the man who seemed so nervous he could barely speak, is now revealed as the servant of the Dark Lord. He unwraps his turban and the face, not a face really, but a presence, a grotesque, parasitic second face growing from the back of his head, with red eyes and slits for nostrils. This is Voldemort, in his most vulnerable form, clinging to life through the body of another. The confrontation is brief. Quirrell explains his plan, his theft of the stone, his pursuit of power, and then he makes his move. He tries to kill Harry, but here is where the story takes its first sharp turn into moral complexity. Harry does not cast a spell. He does not shout an incantation. He does not wield a wand. He simply touches Quirrell, and the touch burns. It burns like fire, like acid, like something far worse than any curse could ever be. Quirrell's skin blisters and cracks. His hands, the hands that had been strangling Harry moments before, begin to dissolve. The pain is so intense that Quirrell screams, a scream that echoes through the chamber and through the entire first book. And Harry, this 11-year-old boy, feels the agony too. He feels it in his own scar, a searing pain that connects him to the monster on the other side of that touch. This is the physical reality of the touch of protection. It is not a spell. It is not a weapon Harry chooses to use. It is a reaction, a biological and magical response to the presence of pure evil. Lily's sacrifice, that ancient act of love, has imbued Harry with a power that is not his to control. It is a shield, but it is a shield that burns. And when Quirrell touches that shield, it destroys him. Now, we have to sit with the discomfort of this moment. Harry does not intend to kill. He is trying to escape. He is trying to survive. He is a child, cornered by a man who is possessed by a dark wizard, and his only instinct is to push back. But that pushback, that desperate act of self-preservation, is lethal. Quirrell's body cannot withstand the contact. The magic in Harry's blood, The protection that flows through his very veins is poison to the fragment of Voldemort that clings to Quirrell's soul. And as that poison spreads, Quirrell's body crumbles. The text is very specific about what happens. Quirrell does not die from a curse. He does not die from a spell. He dies from the burning. He dies from the physical trauma of being touched by a force that is the opposite of everything he has become. His skin peels, his flesh chars, and he collapses into a pile of ash and dust. It is a death that is almost clinical in its description, but it is a death nonetheless. And this is where the moral ambiguity begins to take shape. Is Harry a killer? If we define a killer as someone who takes a life with intent, then no. Harry has no intent. He has no understanding of what his touch will do. He is acting on pure instinct, the instinct of a child who is being choked to death. But if we define a killer as someone who is the direct cause of a death, then the answer becomes more complicated. Harry's hand is the instrument, Harry's body is the weapon, and Quirrell dies because Harry exists. The debate, then, is not about intent, it is about agency. Did Harry choose to kill, or did the protection choose to kill through him? And this is where the series introduces a theme that will run through every single death that follows. The line between murder and self-defense is never clean. The line between killing and being killed is always blurred. And in this moment, with Quirrell's ashes still smoking on the floor, we are forced to ask a question that has no easy answer. Some argue that Quirrell's death is not Harry's kill at all. They point to Voldemort. They say that Voldemort's possession, his parasitic grip on Quirrell's soul, is the true cause. Quirrell was already dying. He was already being consumed. The touch of Harry's protection simply accelerated a process that was already underway. Voldemort's presence in Quirrell's body was a cancer, and Harry's touch was the final, fatal blow to a host that was already failing. But this argument, while compelling, does not absolve Harry. It does not remove the weight of the moment. Because Harry is the one who reaches out. Harry is the one who makes contact. And even if Voldemort is the ultimate cause, Harry is the immediate cause. The chain of events leads directly from his fingers to Quirrell's flesh. And that chain, that connection, is what makes this death so difficult to categorize. Think about the sensory reality of that moment. Harry, his hand burning, his scar screaming, watches a man turn to dust. He watches the flesh fall away from the bone. He watches the eyes, those terrified eyes, go blank. And then he is alone. The chamber is silent. The only sound is the drip of water from the pipes and the crackle of the dying torch. And Harry, this boy who has just seen his first death, does not know what to feel. He does not celebrate. He does not mourn. He simply stands there in the aftermath and waits for Dumbledore to arrive. And when Dumbledore does arrive, he does not call Harry a killer. He does not say, "You have taken a life." He says, "You have done a brave thing, a good thing." He reframes the death as a victory. He reframes the destruction of Quirrell as the defeat of Voldemort. But the reframing does not erase the reality. The reframing does not change the fact that Harry's hands, those small 11-year-old hands, have been the instrument of a man's end. And that fact will follow Harry through every book, every battle, every moment of doubt. It will follow him when he faces the Basilisk, when he faces the Dementors, when he faces the Death Eaters. It will follow him all the way to the final confrontation in the Great Hall, because this is the first kill. It is the first time Harry sees death up close. It is the first time he feels the weight of a life ending because of him, and it is the first time he has to live with that weight. Now, we need to talk about what this death means for the larger story. Quirrell's death is not just a death, it is a statement. It is a declaration that the magic of love, the magic of sacrifice, is more powerful than any dark art. It is a declaration that Voldemort, even in his most desperate form, cannot touch the thing that Lily created. And it is a declaration that Harry, this boy who was marked as the chosen one, is not just a victim. He is not just a survivor. He is a force. But that force is not always gentle. That force is not always kind. And when it touches someone, even someone who is already corrupted, it leaves a mark. It leaves a scar. And in this case, it leaves a corpse. The moral ambiguity of this moment is what makes it so compelling. Harry is not a killer in the traditional sense. He is not a murderer. He is not a villain. But he is a character who has taken a life, and that life is the first of many. It is the first step on a path that will lead to more deaths, more choices, more moments where the line between right and wrong is impossible to see. And as we move forward, as we leave this chamber and this body behind, we have to ask ourselves what we believe. Was Quirrell's death a murder? Was it a mercy? Was it simply the inevitable result of a boy being protected by a power he could not control? The answers are not clear. The answers are not simple. And that is the point. Because the wizarding world, like our own, does not deal in absolutes. It deals in consequences. And the consequence of this moment is that Harry Potter, at age 11, has his first kill. But it will not be his last. And now, as we turn the page, we must look at another death, a death that is even more complicated, even more debated. We must look at the diary, the ghost, and the boy who was not a boy at all. We must look at the death of a memory and the question of whether a memory can be murdered. That is the story of the next chapter, the story of the diary and the ghost of a murderer. The previous chapter ended with Harry Potter's hands on Quirinus Quirrell, with the burning and the screaming and the question that has never quite been settled. Did an 11-year-old boy kill a man? But that was a human death, tangled up in possession and dark magic and the protective force of a mother's love. That was a death that happened to a person. Tonight's chapter asks a different kind of question entirely. It asks whether a snake counts. It asks whether a ghost can die. We have to go back to the chamber. We have to go back to the place where the stone walls are damp and the pipes are wide enough for a serpent to slide through, and where a 16-year-old girl's ghost has been waiting for a killer to return. But the killer who comes back is not the one she remembers. It is not a handsome prefect with a charming smile and a talent for finding lost things. It is a memory. It is a piece of a soul that has been preserved in ink, trapped in a diary, and hungry for the chance to become real again. And so we arrive at the second year at Hogwarts, at the moment when Harry Potter descends into the Chamber of Secrets with a broken wand and a phoenix and a sorting hat that hides a sword. He goes down there to save Ginny Weasley, who has been drained of life and left to lie on the cold stone floor. He goes down there to face the monster that has been petrifying students, the monster that has been slithering through the walls, the monster that is the basilisk of Slytherin. And he goes down there to face the ghost of a murderer. That ghost is Tom Riddle, not the man he will become, not the noseless creature who will one day rule the Ministry of Magic from a tower of fear, but the boy, the 16-year-old boy who stands in the chamber and smiles at Harry and tells him that he has already done everything he needs to do. He has already opened the chamber. He has already set the basilisk loose. He has already made Ginny Weasley write until her hand cramped and her heart broke. And now he only needs Harry to die. But Harry does not die. The Phoenix brings him the sorting hat, and the sorting hat brings him the sword of Gryffindor, and Harry drives that sword into the fang of the basilisk. He drives it through the roof of the serpent's mouth, through the place where the venom lives, and the basilisk crashes to the ground. The great snake is dead. The great snake that has been killing for centuries, that has been hiding in the walls of Hogwarts since Salazar Slytherin built the school, is dead. And the question that hangs in the air, the question that this chapter must answer, is whether that death counts. Does killing a magical creature count toward the tally? Does killing a snake that is not a person, that is not a wizard, that is not a human being with a name and a family and a future count as a kill? The answer is not simple. The answer is not clean, because the basilisk is not just a snake. The basilisk is a weapon. The basilisk is a tool that Tom Riddle used to try to purge the school of everyone he considered unworthy. The basilisk is a creature that, by its very nature, is a killer. Its gaze can kill. Its venom can kill. Its presence in the walls of Hogwarts has already killed, has already taken the life of moaning Myrtle, has already taken the life of a girl who was just in the wrong bathroom at the wrong time. So when Harry Potter kills the basilisk, he is not killing a pet. He is not killing a random animal that happened to be in the wrong place. He is killing the instrument of a murder plot. He is killing the thing that Tom Riddle used to try to kill him, and he is doing it in self-defense, in the heat of a battle where the alternative is his own death. But does that make it a kill? Does that make it a death that belongs on the list of every Harry Potter character that has killed somebody? The answer is more complicated than that, because the basilisk is not the only thing that dies in the Chamber of Secrets. The diary dies too. The diary that holds the memory of Tom Riddle, the diary that holds the piece of his soul that he tore off when he was 16 years old and still calling himself Tom Riddle. That diary is destroyed. Harry takes the fang of the basilisk, the fang that is still dripping with venom, the fang that is still deadly, and he drives it into the heart of the diary. He drives it through the pages, through the ink, through the memory that has been standing in front of him and smiling and talking about how he is going to become the greatest wizard who ever lived. And that memory screams, that memory writhes, that memory twists and dissolves and fades into nothing because it is not a person. It is not a living thing. It is a fragment of a soul that has been preserved in a magical object, and when that object is destroyed, the fragment dies. The fragment is killed. The fragment is ended. So here is the question that this chapter has to face. Here is the question that this chapter has to answer. When Harry Potter drives the fang of the basilisk into the diary of Tom Riddle, he is not just destroying a book. He is not just ruining a piece of paper. He is killing a piece of a soul. He is killing a part of Voldemort that Voldemort himself had to murder to create. He is killing the memory of a 16-year-old boy who had already killed, who had already poisoned, who had already set the basilisk loose on the school. And he does not know it. He does not understand it. He is 12 years old, and he is standing in a chamber full of stone and water and the body of a dead snake, and he is holding a sword that is covered in venom, and he is watching the memory of Tom Riddle dissolve into smoke. He does not know that he has just killed a piece of a soul. He does not know that he has just destroyed a Horcrux. He does not know that he has just done something that Voldemort himself believed was impossible. Something that Voldemort himself believed could not be done by anyone but the person who created the Horcrux in the first place. But he has. He has killed a piece of a soul before he understood what it was. He has killed a fragment of Voldemort's immortality before he even knew what immortality meant. And that death, that destruction, that ending of a thing that was not a person, but was still a piece of a person, is a kill. It is a death. It is a moment that belongs on the list of every Harry Potter character that has killed somebody. Because Harry Potter has killed something that was part of the most evil wizard who ever lived. But the question remains. The question that haunts this chapter, the question that haunts this entire series, is whether killing a magical creature counts. Does killing a snake that is not a person, that is not a wizard, that is not a human being, count as a kill? The answer, in the context of this documentary, is yes, it counts. It counts because the basilisk is not just a snake. The basilisk is a weapon that has been used to kill, a weapon that has been used to try to kill, a weapon that has been used to end the lives of children who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And when Harry Potter kills that weapon, when he destroys the thing that Tom Riddle used to try to kill him, he is ending the life of a creature that was designed to end lives. But there is another layer. There is another layer to this chapter, another layer to this story that makes the death of the basilisk even more complicated, because the basilisk is not just a snake. The basilisk is a Horcrux. The basilisk is a vessel that contains a piece of Voldemort's soul. And when Harry kills the basilisk, he is not just killing a snake. He is killing a piece of a soul. He is killing a fragment of Voldemort's immortality. And that is a kill that matters. A kill that belongs on the list of every Harry Potter character that has killed somebody. But the death of the basilisk is not the only death in the Chamber of Secrets. The death of the diary is not the only death in the Chamber of Secrets. The death of the memory of Tom Riddle is not the only death in the Chamber of Secrets, because there is another death that happens in that chamber, another death that happens in that moment that is even more complicated. The death of the basilisk is a death that happens to a creature. The death of the diary is a death that happens to a piece of a soul. But the death of the memory of Tom Riddle is a death that happens to a person who was never really alive, a person who was never really real, a person who was just a shadow of a man who would become a monster. And that death of the memory, that death of the 16-year-old boy who stood in the chamber and smiled and talked about how he was going to become the greatest wizard who lived, that death is a kill. It is a kill because Harry Potter has killed something that was part of Voldemort. He has killed something that was part of the most evil wizard who ever lived, and he has done it without knowing, without understanding, without realizing that he has just done something that Voldemort himself believed was impossible. We left off with the destruction of a memory, the ghost of a murderer, and the question of whether killing a magical creature counts toward a human death toll. But now, we have to turn our attention to a different kind of killer entirely, one who doesn't act out of rage or ambition, but out of pure, trembling fear. And that brings us to Peter Pettigrew, the man history remembers as the coward who chose the blade. To understand Peter Pettigrew, you have to understand the Fidelius charm. It was supposed to be the ultimate protection, a spell that hides a secret so completely that even the most determined legilimens can't pry it out of your mind. James and Lily Potter chose Sirius Black to be their secret keeper, but at the last moment, they switched to Peter. It was a decision born of trust, of friendship, of believing that the quiet, nervous boy who always followed the others would be the safest choice. But safety was never what Peter offered. The betrayal of the Fidelius charm is not just a story about one man breaking a promise. It is an act of indirect mass murder. Think about the mechanics of that night. Peter didn't raise his wand against James and Lily. He didn't cast a single killing curse. He simply walked to Voldemort and told him where the door was. And in doing so, he set in motion a chain of events that would end with 2 parents dead, a child orphaned, and a war reignited across the entire wizarding world. The deaths of James and Lily Potter are on his hands, but so are the countless others who would die in the war that followed. Every curse cast by a Death Eater in the years after, every family torn apart, every child left without a mother or father. That blood traces back to the moment Peter opened his mouth. But the full weight of his cowardice didn't become visible until the confrontation in the street. That night, when Sirius Black finally cornered Peter, the truth came out in a burst of fire and chaos. Peter knew he was caught. He knew that Sirius, with all the rage of 12 years in Azkaban, was going to kill him. And in that moment, Peter made a choice. He didn't fight. He didn't try to reason. He screamed, he begged, and then he did the one thing that would guarantee his survival. He transformed, and he ran. But he didn't run alone. The street was full of muggles, ordinary people going about their evening, completely unaware that the history of their world was about to be rewritten in a single explosion. Peter's transformation sent a shockwave through the pavement, and the gas main beneath them ruptured. 2 people died in that moment, not from a curse, not from a spell, but from the sheer force of a man so desperate to escape that he would tear apart anything in his path. Those 12 muggles are Peter's victims, just as surely as James and Lily are. He killed them, not because he hated them, not because they were threats, but because they were in the way. And that is the most terrifying kind of killer. Peter Pettigrew is the most dangerous type of killer because he kills out of fear. He doesn't have the grand vision of Voldemort, the ideology of Bellatrix, or the calculated strategy of Dumbledore. He has only the desperate animal instinct to survive. And that instinct, when it meets the wrong circumstances, becomes a weapon. He killed Cedric Diggory because Voldemort told him to, and he was too afraid to refuse. He killed those muggles because he was too afraid to face Sirius. He killed James and Lily because he was too afraid to die. Every death in Peter's wake is a testament to the same truth. But a man who will do anything to live is a man who will do anything to kill. And now, as we stand at the edge of this chapter, we have to ask ourselves what happens when that fear meets a graveyard. What happens when the coward is given a direct order, and the only thing standing between him and his master's wrath is a boy who has already faced death once before. That is the story we have to follow next. The story of a boy who was killed not by a curse, but by the hand of a man who was too afraid to say no. The last chapter ended with Peter Pettigrew standing in the street, his wand hand trembling, the bodies of 12 muggles scattered like broken dolls. That was the moment the coward's mask finally slipped, but the true measure of Wormtail's evil would not be taken until a graveyard in Little Hangleton, under a sky the colour of old bone, when he spoke the 3 most terrible words in the entire franchise: kill the spare. Let's go back to the night of the 3rd task, the maze, the Triwizard Cup. Harry Potter and Cedric Diggory, hands on the same trophy, 2 boys who had spent the year as rivals but had chosen to share victory. They were champions, both of them, and in that moment, they were also friends. The cup was a portkey. It yanked them from the Hogwarts grounds into a graveyard, and the air changed. It became cold, heavy, wrong. Cedric saw the figure first, a man in a black robe, holding something that looked like a bundle of flesh. He asked, "Who are you?" And then he said, "Where's the 3rd task?" He was confused, polite, still a student. He did not know he was standing in the middle of a resurrection. He did not know he was already dead. The command came from the bundle, from the mouth of the thing that was not yet a body. Voldemort's voice, thin and high, spoke through the servant's flesh. Kill the spare. It was not a request. It was not a plan. It was a dismissal. A boy who had done nothing but win a school tournament, who had shown courage and fairness and grace, was reduced to a single word: spare. The extra, the one you throw away. Wormtail raised the wand. Not his own wand, you understand. That is a detail that matters. He used Voldemort's wand, the one that had been taken from the grave, the one that had already killed. It was a tool of continuity, a way to make the murder a direct extension of the Dark Lord's will. The green light shot from the tip, and it hit Cedric Diggory in the chest. He did not scream. He did not have time. He simply fell, his body hitting the grass with a soft thud, his face still frozen in the expression of a boy who had just realized something was terribly wrong. Harry watched. He could not move. He could not breathe. He saw Cedric's body lie there, and he understood, in the way that children understand things they should not have to, that the world had just changed. The school year was over. The adventure was over. What was left was a war. This death is the loss of innocence for the entire series. Think about it. Before the graveyard, Harry Potter was a story about a boy who escaped danger, who fought trolls and basilisks and dark wizards in disguise. The stakes were high, but the deaths were distant. Quirrell died in a room. The basilisk was a monster. Even the Chamber of Secrets was a place you could walk away from. But Cedric Diggory was a person. He was a student. He had a girlfriend, a father, a future. He was the first character we watched die, not because he made a mistake, not because he was a villain, but because he was in the way. And the command itself, kill the spare, is the most cold-blooded line in the franchise. It is not a threat. It is not a curse. It is an instruction, given in the middle of a ritual, as if the death of a 17-year-old boy is no more significant than a step in a recipe. Voldemort did not even look at Cedric. He was focused on the cauldron, on the bone and the blood and the flesh of the servant. The spare was just a problem to be solved, and Wormtail solved it. But here is the thing about Wormtail. He is not a killer by nature. He is a killer by fear. He killed Cedric because Voldemort told him to, because the alternative was worse, because he had spent 12 years as a rat and he was terrified of being a rat again. He did not want to do it. He did it anyway. That is the difference between a monster and a coward. A monster enjoys the act. A coward just wants it to be over. And when it was over, when the body of Lord Voldemort rose from the cauldron, Wormtail did not look at the body on the ground. He did not say a word. He just took the baby, the bundle of skin and bone that was his master, and he walked away. He left Cedric in the grass. He left Harry tied to the headstone. He left the graveyard to the wind and the dark. That is the tragedy. Not that Cedric died, though that is tragedy enough. It is that he died for nothing. He was not part of the prophecy. He was not the boy who lived. He was just a boy who happened to be there, who happened to be kind, who happened to touch the wrong cup at the wrong time. And his death, the death that made the series real, was carried out by a man who had already betrayed his best friends, who had already killed 12 muggles in a street, who had already proven he would do anything to survive. Wormtail was not the villain of the graveyard, he was the tool, and tools do not feel guilt. So when we talk about killers in the Harry Potter universe, we have to talk about Peter Pettigrew. He is not Voldemort, he is not Bellatrix, he is not even a Death Eater in the traditional sense. He is a man who killed because he was told to, because he was afraid, because he had no other option, and that, in some ways, is worse. It means the murder was not passion, it was not hate, it was just obedience. And obedience, when it is complete, leaves no room for remorse. Cedric Diggory's body was brought back to Hogwarts. He was carried through the maze, his face pale, his eyes open. The entire school watched, they wept. They did not know how to process it. And Harry, who had held him when he was alive, who had tried to warn him, who had watched him fall, had to live with the knowledge that he was the one who came back. He was the one who survived. He was the spare who was not killed. And that is the weight of the graveyard. It is the moment the story stops being a fairy tale and starts being a history. It is the moment we understand that no one is safe. Not the brave, not the kind, not the ones who just wanted to win a cup. Which brings us to the next chapter in this story. Barty Crouch Jr.'s path of destruction is not a straight line. It is a circle, and it begins with a father who did not love him, and a mother who could not save him, and a master who saw him as the most useful tool of all. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. The previous chapter ended with the echo of a single command, kill the spare, and the death of Cedric Diggory. That moment was the franchise's turning point, the moment the school story became a war story. But the hand that cast that spell, the hand that held Voldemort's wand and delivered the killing curse, belonged to a man who was already a ghost. Peter Pettigrew was a servant, a coward brought back to heal. But the architect of that entire resurrection, the man who spent a year living in a trunk, plotting, stealing, and transforming himself into a perfect weapon for the Dark Lord, was Barty Crouch Jr., and his path of destruction is one of the most chilling and deeply personal in the entire series. Barty Crouch Jr. is often remembered as the man who impersonated Mad-Eye Moody, who taught the unforgivable curses to a classroom of 14-year-olds and who delivered Harry Potter to Voldemort. But that single year of terror, from the fall of 1994 to the summer of 1995, was not the beginning of his violence. It was the climax. It was the final desperate act of a son who had already killed his own father. To understand Barty Crouch Jr. as a killer, you have to understand the murder of Barty Crouch Sr. and the psychological warfare that made it possible. Barty Crouch Sr. was a man of absolute order. He was the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, the man who had sent Sirius Black to Azkaban without a trial, the man who had condemned his own son to a lifetime in that same prison. He was a believer in the letter of the law, even when the spirit of it screamed for mercy. When his son was caught as a Death Eater, when the evidence showed he had been part of the inner circle that tortured the Longbottoms into madness, Barty Crouch did not plead for leniency. He did not use his influence. He did the opposite. He made an example of his own flesh and blood. He sentenced him to Azkaban. He stood in the courtroom and watched as his son was dragged away, and he did it to prove that the law applied to everyone, even to the son of the man who made the law. That is the kind of father who creates a monster. Barty Crouch Jr. did not just hate the Order of the Phoenix. He did not just hate the Ministry. He hated his father with a specific, burning, personal fury. And when he was freed from Azkaban by his dying mother, when she used the Polyjuice potion to take his place in that cell and rot away herself, Barty Crouch Jr. was given a second chance, but he was not given a new life. He was given a cage. His father kept him under the imperious curse, hidden in the family home, a secret prisoner in his own house. For years, Barty Crouch Jr. was a puppet, a living trophy of his father's shame. He was not allowed to speak. He was not allowed to move. He was not allowed to exist as anything other than a reminder of what Barty Crouch Sr. had sacrificed to prove his own righteousness. And then came the Quidditch World Cup, the summer of 1994. Barty Crouch Sr., in his arrogance, in his belief that he had everything under control, allowed his son to leave the house. He allowed him to attend the match, disguised as a house elf, hidden under a cloak of obedience. And in that moment, in the chaos of the dark mark being cast by Death Eaters in the stands, Barty Crouch Jr. broke free. He was seen, he was recognized, and his father, in a panic, did not try to reason with him. He did not try to embrace him. He did what he always did. He tried to control him. He tried to silence him. The murder of Barty Crouch Sr. is not a simple story of a son killing a father. It is a story of a son killing a jailer. Barty Crouch Jr. did not kill his father in a fit of rage. He did not kill him in a duel. He killed him in a forest, in the dark, after the chaos of the World Cup, when his father had finally lost control of the situation. He killed him with a single act of violence, and then he did something that is almost impossible to process. He transfigured his father's corpse into a bone. Think about that. A bone, not a body, not a trophy, not a message, a bone. He took the man who had sentenced him to Azkaban, the man who had kept him under the imperious curse for years, a man who had denied him his very name, and he reduced him to a piece of the skeleton. He buried him in the ground of the Riddle house, the same ground where the Riddles themselves had been buried, the same ground where Voldemort had killed his own father. It is a poetic act of destruction. It is a statement. It is a son saying, "You are nothing. You are no longer my father. You are just a piece of the past, and I will bury you in the dirt of the man who taught me how to kill." The psychological warfare of this act is staggering. Barty Crouch Jr. did not just kill his father. He erased him. He made him disappear. He made it so that the entire world believed his father had simply run away, had abandoned his post, had cracked under the pressure of the investigation into the dark mark. He made his father's reputation a lie. He made his father's legacy a joke. And he did it all to please a dark master who had not even yet returned. He did it to prove that he was worthy of Voldemort's trust. He did it to prove that he could be trusted with the greatest secret of all, the secret of the resurrection. But Barty Crouch Jr.'s path of destruction does not end with that single bone. He is a character who is often forgotten in the kill count discussions because his most famous act, the kidnapping of Mad-Eye Moody, the impersonation, the year of teaching, did not directly result in a death, but that is a lie. Barty Crouch Jr. was a Death Eater in the First War. He was part of the inner circle that tortured the Longbottoms. He was part of the group that followed Voldemort into the Ministry, that fought in the halls of the Department of Mysteries, that spread terror across the wizarding world. He was not a new recruit. He was a veteran. And when he was freed from his father's control, when he was given the chance to act again, he did not hesitate. He did not hold back. He killed. The implied deaths during his time as a loyal Death Eater are numerous. He was part of the group that hunted down the survivors of the First War. He was part of the group that tortured information out of captured Order members. He was part of the group that made the Longbottoms what they became. He was not a bystander. He was an active participant. And when he was finally caught, when he was finally brought to trial, his father did not defend him. His father did not save him. His father made him a symbol of the law's cruelty, and that is what Barty Crouch Jr. could never forgive. The murder of Barty Crouch Sr. is the most intimate kill in the entire series. It is not a kill in battle. It is not a kill for power. It is a kill for revenge. It is a son looking at his father and saying, "You made me what I am. You gave me to the Dark Lord. You locked me in a cage. And now I will take everything from you. I will take your name. I will take your body. I will take your life. And I will turn you into a bone so that you can be buried in the dirt of the man who taught me that love is weakness." Barty Crouch Jr. is a killer who is often overlooked because his story is so tied to the resurrection of Voldemort, but he is one of the most dangerous characters in the entire series. He is a man who was willing to kill his own father to prove his loyalty. He is a man who was willing to spend a year in a trunk, living as a prisoner, just to get close to Harry Potter. He is a man who was willing to do anything for the Dark Lord. And when he was finally caught, when he was finally kissed by a Dementor, the world did not mourn him. The world did not remember him. The world just moved on to the next threat. But the next threat, the one who would take his place in the hearts of the audience as the most visible, the most active, the most personally violent of all Voldemort's followers, was already waiting. She was already in the shadows. She was already laughing. And her count, her sadist's count, would be far higher than a single bone in the ground. We ended the last chapter with Barty Crouch Jr., a son who murdered his own father to prove his loyalty to Voldemort. That act of twisted devotion, the transfiguration of a living man into a bone, shows us just how deep the darkness runs in Voldemort's inner circle. But if Barty Crouch Jr. represents the calculated, almost academic side of evil, and Bellatrix Lestrange is its raw, screaming heart, she is not a strategist. She is not a follower who kills because she is afraid. Bellatrix Lestrange kills because she loves it. This is why she stands alone as the most prolific female killer in the entire Harry Potter franchise. Not just because of her kill count, though that is higher than any other woman in the story, but because of the way she kills. Her murders are not accidents of battle. They are not the desperate acts of a mother protecting her children, like Molly Weasley's. They are not the cold, necessary assassinations of a spy, like Severus Snape. Bellatrix's killings are personal. They are intimate. They are celebrations. When we look at the confirmed canon, the list of people she has directly ended is short. 2 names stand out above all others: Sirius Black and Dobby the House Elf. But the weight of those 2 deaths is immense. They are not just bodies on a tally. They are the 2 most emotionally devastating deaths in the entire series for very different reasons. And to understand why Bellatrix is the franchise's most prolific female killer, we have to understand the moment that made her infamous: the Department of Mysteries. The battle in the Department of Mysteries is the climax of the 5th book, the moment when the war finally becomes real for Harry Potter. He has spent the entire year being told that Voldemort is back, that the danger is coming, but he has not seen it, he has not felt it. Then he walks into that dark, circular room, the Hall of Prophecy, and he sees them, the Death Eaters, and at the center of them, laughing, is Bellatrix Lestrange. She is not just a fighter in that battle, she is the instigator. She is the one who goads Harry into chasing the prophecy. She is the one who taunts him with the death of his parents. And when the fight finally reaches its peak, when the Order of the Phoenix arrives and the battle becomes a chaotic storm of spells and shattered glass, Bellatrix finds her target. She finds Sirius Black. This is the definitive end of Sirius Black. Not just his death, but the end of his story. He has spent 12 years in Azkaban for a crime he did not commit. He has lived as a fugitive, hiding in caves, eating rats, surviving on the memory of his godson. He has finally come home. He has finally joined the fight. And in one single moment, Bellatrix Lestrange takes it all away. The mechanics of that moment are crucial to understand. When Bellatrix casts the killing curse at Sirius, it is not a direct hit. He is dueling his cousin, laughing, taunting her, calling her by her name. He is in the middle of a fight. And then she sends a jet of red light, a stunning spell, not the green flash of the Avada Kedavra. It hits him in the chest. He stumbles, and then he falls backward through the ancient, tattered veil. This is where the debate begins. Did the curse kill him, or did the fall? The veil is one of the most mysterious objects in the entire wizarding world. It is an archway, a stone frame, with a curtain of black, rippling fabric that seems to move even when there is no wind. It is the entrance to the realm of the dead. No one knows what lies on the other side. No one has ever come back. When Sirius falls through that veil, he is gone. But is it because the stunning spell killed him, or because the veil itself is a doorway that only the dead can pass through? The text of the book is clear. The spell that hit him was a simple stunning spell. It should not have been lethal. But the force of the impact, the momentum of his fall, and the nature of the veil itself all combine to create a death that is both instantaneous and ambiguous. In the film, they change it. They make it a direct killing curse, a flash of green light that hits him square in the chest. That is cleaner, that is simpler. But the book is more complex. The book asks us to wonder, did Bellatrix Lestrange actually kill her own cousin, or did she simply push him through a door that was already open? The answer, for the purposes of this count, is that she is responsible. She cast the spell, she aimed it, she intended to kill. And whether the spell itself did the work, or the veil did the work, the result is the same. Sirius Black is dead, and Bellatrix Lestrange is the one who did it. But that is not her only kill. A second confirmed death is even more heartbreaking. It is Dobby the house elf. The scene at Malfoy Manor is a desperate escape. Harry, Ron, and Hermione have been captured by Snatchers. They are being held in the cellar of the Malfoy family home, and Bellatrix is there. She is not just a guest. She is the one who takes control. She is the one who tortures Hermione for information. She is the one who threatens to kill them all. And when Dobby appears, when the little house elf arrives to save them, Bellatrix does not hesitate. She throws a knife. It is not a spell. It is not a wand. It is a simple silver blade thrown with the same casual cruelty that she uses for everything. And it hits Dobby in the chest. The elf dies in Harry's arms, his final words a whisper of thanks. This is not a battle. This is not a war. This is a murder. Bellatrix Lestrange kills a defenseless creature who is only trying to help, and that is why she is the most prolific female killer in the franchise. Not because she has a long list of names, not because she has killed more people than anyone else, but because every single one of her kills is personal. Every single one is emotional. Every single one is designed to hurt the people who love her victims. She kills Sirius to break Harry's heart. She kills Dobby to break Harry's spirit, and she would have killed more. She would have killed Ginny Weasley if Molly had not stopped her, but Molly does stop her, and that is the end of Bellatrix Lestrange. She dies at the hands of a mother who is fighting for her children. It is the only death in the entire series that feels truly satisfying, and it is the only death that Bellatrix herself would have understood. She would have respected it, because she knew, better than anyone, that the most powerful weapon in the world is not a curse. It is love, and it is hate, and she had both. Now we have to move on, because the next death on this list is not a human death. It is not a wizard. It is not a witch. It is a house elf, and it is the death that changes everything. The next chapter is called The Fall of the Free Elf. We left Bellatrix Lestrange standing over the body of Sirius Black, her laughter still echoing through the Department of Mysteries. That was the moment the fandom knew, without any doubt, that she was not just a devoted follower of the Dark Lord. She was a killer who revelled in the act itself. But her story does not end with the death of a beloved godfather. There is another death, one that carries a different kind of weight, a different kind of hatred from the audience. It happens during the escape from Malfoy Manor, and it involves a silver knife that should never have been thrown. Let us walk through that moment. The trio has been dragged to the ancestral home of the Malfoys, a place of cold marble and darker secrets. Harry, Ron and Hermione are prisoners in the cellar, their wands taken, their hope dimming, but they are not alone. Luna Lovegood is there, and so is the Goblin Griffock and the Wandmaker Mr. Ollivander. And then there is Dobby. The free elf has been watching the Marauders map from afar, and he has come to rescue them, not because he was asked, but because he wanted to. He is the embodiment of loyalty without a leash. The escape is chaotic. Dobby appears in the cellar with a chandelier that crashes down, disorienting the captors. He disapparates with Luna, then with Mr. Ollivander, then with Griffock. He is a whirlwind of rescue, and for a moment, it seems like they will all make it. But then comes the final lift. Harry grabs Ron and Hermione, and Dobby reaches for them. They are almost free. The air is twisting, the world is spinning, and they are about to vanish into safety. But Bellatrix Lestrange is not a witch who lets her prey escape. She has seen the house elf, the traitor, the one who dared to defy her family. And in that moment, as the trio is disappearing, she does not reach for a wand. She does not cast a spell that can be blocked. She reaches for a silver knife, a blade that was lying on a table, a weapon of pure metal and sharp intent, and she throws it. The knife does not fly through the air with a curse. It does not glow or hum. It is just a blade, moving with the force of a witch who has killed before and will kill again. It strikes Dobby in the chest, right as he is about to disapparate with Harry. The free elf falls. The escape is complete, but the cost is immediate. Dobby dies in Harry's arms, his eyes wide, his last words a whisper of gratitude for the friends who set him free. Now, why is this death considered the most hated kill in the entire fandom? It is not because Dobby is a major character with decades of screen time. He appears in only a few books and a handful of films, but his death is hated because it is so utterly pointless. It is not a battle. It is not a duel. It is not a moment of strategic necessity. It is a moment of pure petty cruelty. Bellatrix does not need to kill the elf. The trio is already escaping. The knife is thrown not to win a war, but to satisfy a whim. It is the death of a creature who has just achieved his greatest dream, freedom, and it is taken from him by a woman who cannot stand to see anything she considers property walk away. And this is where we must analyze Bellatrix's lack of remorse. She does not flinch. She does not gasp. She does not look at the body and feel a single moment of regret. For her, the death of a house elf is not a murder. It is a correction. It is the proper order of the world reasserting itself. She has been raised in the pure blood doctrine, where non-human life is lesser, where elves are tools, where their existence is defined by service. And when Dobby chooses to serve Harry instead of the Malfoys, he is, in her eyes, committing an act of treason that must be punished with finality. This lack of remorse is what defines her as a warrior, not a soldier, not a fighter, a warrior. Because a warrior does not kill for survival. A warrior kills for belief. Bellatrix believes in the supremacy of blood, in the right of the Dark Lord, in the purity of violence. And that belief is so absolute that she can throw a knife at a fleeing elf and never think about it again. She can kill Sirius Black and laugh. She can kill Dobby and walk away. Her soul is not troubled by these deaths. They are trophies. They are proof of her conviction. The fandom hates this kill because it is the moment where the line between villain and monster blurs. Voldemort kills for power. He kills to create Horcruxes, to eliminate threats, to build his empire. But Bellatrix kills for the joy of the act. She kills because she can. And Dobby, who is the most innocent soul in the entire series, a creature who has never harmed anyone, who has only ever tried to help, is the one who pays the price for her amusement. There is a deeper layer here too. Dobby's death is the death of the free elf. He is the symbol of liberation, of breaking chains, of choosing your own path. And Bellatrix, with that silver knife, is the symbol of the old world, the world that wants to keep everyone in chains. She is the enforcer of a system where some are born to rule and some are born to serve. And when she kills Dobby, she is trying to prove that system is still in place, that no one can truly escape. But she fails, because Dobby dies free. He dies in the act of rescue, his last breath given to save others. He dies with his eyes on Harry, not on his captors, and that is the tragedy. The free elf falls, but he falls on his own terms. Bellatrix may have thrown the knife, but she did not break his spirit. She could not, because Dobby had already broken the chain the moment he chose to help Harry Potter, and this is why his death is the most hated. Not because it is violent, not because it is sudden, but because it is the death of a creature who had just learned what it meant to be alive, and it is taken from him by a woman who will never understand what that means. Now, as we close this chapter, we must look ahead, because Bellatrix is not the only Death Eater who kills with a lack of remorse. There is another, a man who stands on the astronomy tower, a man who raises his wand against a friend, a man who will commit a murder that is both a mercy and a betrayal. The next chapter is the story of Severus Snape's impossible choice. And it is a choice that will change everything you think you know about the line between killer and saviour. We ended the last chapter with a silver knife thrown by Bellatrix Lestrange, piercing the chest of a free elf. Dobby's death was a moment of pure tragedy, a life sacrificed in the chaos of escape. But it was also a death that the fandom has never quite forgiven Bellatrix for. That knife was a signature of her cruelty, a quick and brutal end to a creature who had only ever wanted to help. And it leaves us now, standing at the edge of a different kind of darkness, one that is not a sudden throw, but a long calculated fall. We have to talk about the man who held that knife, in a way for years, and who was finally forced to use it. The story of Severus Snape is the story of an impossible choice. A choice that was made for him long before he ever stood on that astronomy tower. To understand what happened that night, when the green light struck Albus Dumbledore and sent him hurtling into the abyss, you have to go back to the moment the choice was sealed. You have to go back to the summer before Harry's 6th year, to a dark and cluttered room in Spinner's End, where a man in black was pacing, waiting for a visitor he did not want. Narcissa Malfoy came to Severus Snape not as a friend, but as a woman in a state of absolute desperation. Her son Draco had been given a task by the Dark Lord, a task she knew was a death sentence. She believed, with every fibre of her being, that her only child would fail, and that Voldemort would kill him for that failure. And so she came to the one man she thought could save him, the one man who had always been in Voldemort's inner circle, the one man who had once been a friend to her sister. She begged Snape to make an unbreakable vow, to swear on his own life and soul that he would protect Draco, that he would finish whatever task the Dark Lord had set for the boy. And Snape, who had already made a different vow, a vow to a dying man in a White Office, a vow to protect the very boy Narcissa wanted to destroy. He took her hand. He swore the oath. He promised that he would do everything in his power to shield Draco Malfoy, and that if the boy could not complete his mission, Snape himself would step in and do it for him. That was the legal and magical binding. That was the moment the trap closed. From that moment, Snape was no longer a free agent. He was bound by a magic that would kill him if he broke his word, a magic that would strip his soul if he failed, and that magic, that vow, had a very specific endpoint. It said that if Draco could not kill Albus Dumbledore, then Severus Snape would have to. Now, you have to understand the position Snape was in. He was a double agent, a man whose entire life was a lie, a man who had spent years convincing the most dangerous wizard in the world that he was loyal. And that wizard, Voldemort, had given Draco the task of killing Dumbledore as a punishment, as a way to destroy the Malfoy family for their failures. But Voldemort also knew that Snape was the only one who could get close enough to Dumbledore. He knew that Snape was the headmaster's trusted man, and so in a way Voldemort was testing Snape too. He was waiting to see if Snape would let Draco fail, or if he would step in and do the deed himself. The vow was not just a promise to Narcissa, it was a promise to the Dark Lord, a promise that Snape would be the one to pull the trigger. But here is the deepest, most painful layer of this story. Dumbledore knew. He knew about the vow. He knew that Snape had bound himself to a path that could only end one way, and Dumbledore, in his infinite terrible wisdom, had already decided that this was the only way. He was dying. He had touched the cursed ring of Marvolo Gaunt, the ring that held the resurrection stone, and the curse had spread through his hand like a slow black poison. He had at most a year to live, and he knew that if he died slowly, if he withered away in that office, the Death Eaters would take over Hogwarts. The war would be lost, but if he died at the right moment, if he died in a way that looked like a murder, then Snape's cover would be absolute. The Dark Lord would trust him completely, and that trust was the only thing that could get Snape close enough to Voldemort in the final battle. So Dumbledore and Snape made a plan. It was not a plan to kill Dumbledore. It was a plan to let Dumbledore die. They agreed that when the moment came, when the Death Eaters were inside the castle, when Draco had failed and the pressure was at its peak, Snape would be the one to do it. He would cast the killing curse, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. He had to make it look like a cold-blooded assassination. He had to make the entire world believe that he had finally earned, that he was the traitor everyone had always suspected. He had to make Harry Potter hate him. And that is what happened on the Astronomy Tower. The night was cold and clear. The Death Eaters had flooded the castle, and Draco had cornered Dumbledore on the ramparts. But Draco could not do it. He stood there, his wand shaking, his face pale, and he could not speak the words. He was a boy, and Dumbledore knew it. He talked to Draco, calmly, quietly, trying to give him a way out, trying to tell him that he did not have to be a killer. But then the others came. They heard the noise, and Snape knew that the window was closing. He walked up those spiral stairs, his black robes billowing in the wind, and he looked at Dumbledore. Dumbledore looked back at him, and there was no fear in those blue eyes. There was only a quiet, desperate plea. He said the word that would seal everything. He said, "Severus, please." And Snape understood. He understood that this was not a murder. This was a mercy. This was the only way to end Dumbledore's pain, to end the slow decay of the curse, and to give Snape the one thing he needed to survive. He raised his wand. He pointed it at the man who had been his mentor, his protector, the only person who had ever believed he could be good, and he said the words, Avada Kedavra. A green light shot from the wand and struck Dumbledore in the chest. He was thrown backward over the parapet, and he fell. He fell through the night air, his body twisting, his white beard streaming, and he hit the ground below with a sound that echoed through the entire castle. It was a death that was meant to look like a betrayal. It was a death that was meant to make Harry Potter want to kill Snape. But it was in truth the single most loyal act of the entire war, because Snape did not kill Dumbledore. He killed the man who was already dead. He killed the man who had asked him to do it. He killed the man who knew that this was the only way to save the world. And in that moment, Snape's soul was not destroyed. It was bound. It was bound to a secret so deep that he could never tell anyone, not even the boy he was supposed to protect. He had to live with the knowledge that he was a murderer in the eyes of everyone he knew. He had to live with the hatred of the entire wizarding world. And he did it. He did it because Dumbledore had asked him to. This single act of murder, this cold-blooded assassination on the top of a tower, was actually the ultimate act of loyalty. It was the moment that proved Snape was not a Death Eater. It was the moment that proved he was, in fact, the bravest man Harry ever knew. Because it takes a special kind of courage to kill the one person you love, to do it for the greater good, and to never, ever get the credit for it. And that is the tragedy of Severus Snape. He spent his entire life trying to atone for a single mistake, for the words he spoke to a Dark Lord in a pub, for the death of a woman with green eyes. And in the end, he had to make the most impossible choice of all. He had to become a killer to save the world. He had to become the villain to win the war. But the story does not end there, because after the fall of Dumbledore, after the body hit the ground, the world changed. The Death Eaters took over the ministry. The Dark Lord rose to power, and Snape, now the headmaster of Hogwarts, had to sit in that office and watch as the school he loved became a prison. He had to watch as the children he had tried to protect were tortured and terrorized. And he had to do it all while carrying the weight of that single terrible kill. The next chapter in this story is not about a man who made a choice. It is about a woman who was chosen. It is about a teacher who sat in a classroom, who taught a subject that was already considered dark, and who was taken from that room to be used as a lesson in the most brutal way imaginable. The story of Charity Burbage is a story of how Voldemort used death as a weapon, not just against his enemies, but against the very idea of mercy. And it is a story that will show you just how far the Dark Lord was willing to go to break the world. The previous chapter explored the impossible weight of Severus Snape's choice, the moment he stood on the astronomy tower and cast the killing curse that ended Albus Dumbledore's life. It was a death that looked like betrayal, felt like murder, but was later revealed to be something far more complicated, a mercy killing wrapped in a plan that required Snape to become the most hated man in the wizarding world. But as we move from that moment of calculated tragedy, the story takes us to a very different kind of killing, one that has no hidden layers, no secret mercy, no double meaning. This is the murder of Charity Burbage, and it is one of the most horrifying scenes in the entire series, because it strips away every pretense of subtlety. The scene unfolds at Malfoy Manor, and if you have been following this series from the beginning, you know that this location has already witnessed some of the most brutal deaths in the franchise. It was here that Bellatrix Lestrange threw a silver knife and ended Dobby the house elf's life. It was here that she tortured Hermione Granger until her screams became a permanent scar on the walls. But the meeting that takes place in the 7th book, the gathering of Death Eaters around Voldemort's table, is something else entirely. It is not a battle. It is not a fight. It is a dinner party, and the main course is a human being. Charity Burbage was the Muggle Studies professor at Hogwarts. She taught a subject that, in the eyes of the pure-blood elite, was an insult to the very concept of wizardkind. She believed that Muggles were not so different from wizards, that they deserved understanding, that they deserved protection. She spent her career arguing for tolerance, for coexistence, for a world where blood status did not determine a person's worth. And for that belief, she was dragged from her home, brought to Malfoy Manor, and held as a prisoner, while Voldemort decided what to do with her. The horror of this moment is not just that she is about to die, it is that Voldemort uses her death as a demonstration, as a piece of theatre designed to show his followers exactly what happens to those who disagree with him. He does not simply kill her, he makes her speak first. He forces her to beg, to plead, to explain herself in front of an audience that has already decided she is guilty. And then, when she has said everything she can say, when her voice has become nothing but a desperate whimper, he silences her in the most permanent way possible. The killing itself is not performed by a wand. It is not performed by a curse. Voldemort uses Nagini, his giant snake, his living Horcrux, to physically consume the evidence of Charity Burbage's existence. The snake does not just kill her, it eats her. It swallows her body, while the Death Eaters watch, while the Malfoys watch, while the very air in the room seems to thicken with the weight of what is happening. This is not a quick death. This is not a clean death. This is a death that is designed to be seen, to be remembered, to be used as a warning for anyone who might ever consider teaching Muggles that they are worthy of respect. And here is the deeper layer of this moment that often gets overlooked in discussions of kill counts and death tolls. Voldemort is not just killing a woman because she disagrees with him. He is killing her because she represents something he cannot tolerate. She represents the idea that the wizarding world could be different, that it could be better, that it could include everyone. She is a professor, a teacher, a woman who spent her life trying to change minds, and Voldemort cannot allow that. He cannot allow any version of reality where his ideology is not the only truth. So he makes her a lesson. He makes her a piece of meat. He makes her a story that every Death Eater in that room will carry with them for the rest of their lives. The role of Nagini in this moment is crucial. The snake is not just a weapon. She is a symbol of everything Voldemort has become. He has split his soul so many times that he is no longer fully human, and his connection to Nagini reflects that. She is the only living thing he trusts, the only living thing he keeps close, the only living thing that he allows to share in his most intimate moments of power. And when he uses her to kill Charity Burbage, he is making a statement. He is saying that this woman, this professor, this voice of tolerance, is not even worth a curse. She is not even worth the effort of a spell. She is food. She is something to be consumed and forgotten. The Malfoy Manor meeting is one of the most uncomfortable scenes in the entire series because it forces the reader to sit with the reality, what Voldemort's power actually looks like. It is not a battle. It is not a duel. It is a dinner party where a woman is murdered in front of an audience, and the audience does nothing. They sit, they watch, they wait for their turn to speak. And when it is over, when Nagini has finished her meal, they go back to discussing the war as if nothing happened. This is the moment where the series stops pretending that there is any hope of negotiation with Voldemort. This is the moment where it becomes clear that he is not interested in ruling the wizarding world. He is interested in destroying it. He is interested in reshaping it into something that reflects his own emptiness, his own lack of humanity. And Charity Burbage is just the first of many who will be sacrificed to that vision. But there is another layer to this killing that connects directly to the next chapter in this series. Nagini is not just a snake. She is not just a pet. She is a Horcrux, a piece of Voldemort's soul that he has hidden inside a living creature. And that makes her more than a weapon. It makes her a target. It makes her a character in her own right, a being who will eventually play a role in the final moments of the war. But for now, in this moment, she is the consumer of evidence. She is the physical manifestation of Voldemort's ability to erase anyone who stands in his way. The death of Charity Burbage is a reminder that the wizarding world is not safe. It is a reminder that even the most ordinary people, even the most well-meaning professors, can be pulled into the darkness. And it is a reminder that Voldemort's power is not just about magic. It is about fear. It is about control. It is about making sure that everyone who watches knows exactly what will happen if they step out of line. As we prepare to move into the next chapter, we will look at Nagini herself, the living weapon, the snake, who has been used as an instrument of death more than once. Her role in the story is not just as a killer, it is as a symbol, a final piece of Voldemort's plan, and a creature whose death will mean more than almost any other in the entire series. But for now, let the image of Charity Burbage's final moments linger. Let the horror of that dinner table sit in your mind, because this is what Voldemort does. This is what he has always done. And this is what the wizarding world will spend the rest of Doris to the Storm trying to stop. We ended the last chapter in the Malfoy Manor, watching a Muggle Studies professor fall to her death at Voldemort's command. A dinner table demonstration of power that left no doubt about the Dark Lord's capacity for cruelty. But that scene, as horrific as it was only a prelude to one of the most complicated and disturbing killings in the entire Harry Potter saga. Because the creature that struck Charity Burbage down, the snake that coiled and struck on Voldemort's word, was not just a snake. She was a living weapon, a Horcrux, and a being with a history that stretches back far further than most fans realise. This is the story of Nagini, and the question at the heart of her existence is not whether she killed, but whether she ever had a choice. Let's start with the most brutal moment, the one that brings this chapter to its inevitable conclusion. The Battle of Hogwarts is raging. The castle is under siege. Harry Potter is in the Forbidden Forest, having just walked to his own death, only to return. And in the Shrieking Shack, the most infamous building in all of Hogsmeade, a scene is unfolding that will define the end of the war. Voldemort is there with Nagini coiled beside him, a living cage of magic that protects the snake as his final Horcrux. And Severus Snape is summoned. The man who has played the double agent for years, who has killed Albus Dumbledore, who has protected Harry from the shadows, is called to his master's side, and Voldemort, in his arrogance, believes he has won. He believes that the Elder Wand's true allegiance lies with Snape, because Snape killed its previous master. So Voldemort decides to remove that obstacle. He decides to kill Snape, not with his own hands, but with the living weapon at his side. He speaks the words, the command that separates the snake's instincts from the Dark Lord's will. He says, kill, and Nagini, the snake, the Horcrux, the creature that has been bound to Voldemort's soul for years, strikes. The fangs sink deep into Snape's neck. The venom floods his veins, and the man who has loved, who has lost, who has protected, falls. The brutality of this moment is not just in the death itself, but in the mechanics of it. This is not a duel. This is not a spell. This is a predator's kill, a snake acting on a command. But here is the question that haunts this chapter. Was Nagini acting on instinct? Or was she acting on Voldemort's will? And the answer, as with so much in the wizarding world, is not simple. Nagini is not a normal snake. In the core Harry Potter story, she is a giant serpent, a pet, a Horcrux. But in the broader wizarding world lore, revealed in the Fantastic Beasts films and in J.K. Rowling's own writings, Nagini is something far more tragic. She is a maledictus. That means she carries a blood curse, a condition that will eventually, permanently, turn her into a snake. She was once a woman. Her name in the ancient world was associated with a serpent goddess. She was a performer, a creature of the circus, a being who could shift between forms. But the curse was irreversible, and by the time Voldemort finds her, she is already trapped. She is already more snake than human. She is a creature whose mind, whose soul, is being slowly eroded by the transformation. This complicates her status as a killer in a way that few other characters in this series can match. Because when Voldemort commands Nagini to kill, is he commanding a snake, or is he commanding a cursed woman? Is she acting out of her own predatory nature? Or is she acting out of the bond that ties her to Voldemort's soul? The Horcrux connection is key here. Voldemort placed a fragment of his own soul inside Nagini. That means she is not just a pet. She is a container, a vessel, a piece of the Dark Lord himself. And that means her actions are, in some sense, his actions. She is an extension of his will, but she is also a living creature, with her own instincts, her own drives. And the tragedy is that we never get to see her side of the story. We never get to know if she was fighting, if she was resisting, if she was aware of what she was becoming. The brutal end of Severus Snape in the Shrieking Shack is the moment that crystallizes this ambiguity. Because when Nagini strikes, she is not just killing a man. She is killing the man who has been protecting Harry for years. She is killing the man who made the unbreakable vow. She is killing the man who loved Lily Potter. And in that moment, the snake is acting as a weapon, a tool, a thing. But she is also acting as a Horcrux, a piece of Voldemort's soul that is defending itself. And that makes the death feel even more cold, even more mechanical, because there is no malice in Nagini's strike. There is no cruelty. There is just obedience. She is the perfect soldier, the perfect weapon, because she does not question, she does not hesitate, she just strikes. But here is where the story gets even more complicated, because Nagini's death, the moment she is finally killed, comes at the hands of Neville Longbottom, and that is a moment of pure heroism. Neville, the boy who was always overlooked, the boy who was always afraid, the boy who grew into a leader, takes the sword of Gryffindor and, in the middle of the Battle of Hogwarts, beheads the snake. He destroys the Horcrux. He ends the final fragment of Voldemort's soul. And in that moment, he is not just killing a snake, he is killing a weapon. He is killing a creature that has been used, manipulated, and corrupted by the Dark Lord. And the question that lingers is, did Nagini deserve that death? Was she a victim, or was she a monster? The answer, as with so many things in this series, is both. She was a maledictus, a woman trapped in a curse. She was a Horcrux, a piece of Voldemort's soul. She was a killer, a weapon, a tool. And her story is one of the most tragic in the entire franchise. Because she never had a choice. She never had a moment where she could decide her own fate. She was bound to Voldemort, bound to his will, bound to his soul. And that is what makes her kill of Severus Snape so devastating. It is not just a death. It is a demonstration of what happens when a living being is turned into a weapon. And now, as we move from the Shrieking Shack to the chaos of the Battle of Hogwarts, we must turn our attention to another creature, another being, who was used and manipulated by the Dark Lord. Because the story of Nagini is not the only story of a creature who was forced to serve. The goblins, the ancient race of beings who have their own history, their own loyalties, their own grudges, are about to play a crucial role in the final act of this war. And the question of whether they were allies or enemies, whether they were willing participants or coerced servants, will lead us directly into the next chapter, the Goblin Rebellion and Gringotts, a story of betrayal, of greed, and of a dragon that burned a city to the ground. We ended the last chapter with Nagini coiled in the Shrieking Shack, her fangs still wet with Severus Snape's blood. That was the moment Voldemort's most loyal living weapon completed her final command. But before that death, before the Battle of Hogwarts reached its breaking point, there was another scene of slaughter that often gets overlooked. It happened at Gringotts, and it reveals something crucial about the Dark Lord's psychology. When Voldemort stops being surgical, he becomes messy, and that mess has a body count. The heist at Gringotts was one of the most audacious operations in the entire war. Harry, Ron, and Hermione, with the help of Griffook, had broken into the Lestrange's vault. They had taken the Hufflepuff Cup, one of the remaining Horcruxes. But the moment they touched that cup, the security enchantments triggered. The vault began to multiply its contents, burning them with scalding heat. And then the alarms sounded, deep and guttural, echoing through the marble halls of the Wizarding Bank. What happened next was not a clean escape. It was a panic. The trio escaped on the back of a dragon, a creature that had been chained and abused for centuries. That dragon, as it burst through the main floor of Gringotts, caused chaos. It smashed pillars, it shattered chandeliers, it sent goblins scrambling. But the real horror came after they fled, when Voldemort learned that the cup had been stolen, that his most secure hiding place had been breached. He did not think, he did not plan, he reacted. And his reaction was a blind rage that swept through the bank like a curse. He arrived at Gringotts not to investigate, not to question, but to punish. And in that punishment, he did not care who was in his way. The goblins who worked at Gringotts were not his enemies. They were his servants, his collaborators, the very creatures who had helped him hide his treasures. But in that moment, they became collateral. Voldemort's rage was not surgical. It was not the careful, calculated murder of a political opponent. It was the messy, desperate violence of a man who felt his immortality slipping through his fingers. He killed the goblins who had been on duty. He killed the ones who had tried to flee. He killed the ones who had done nothing but stand in the wrong corridor at the wrong moment. The bodies piled up in the marble halls. The blood ran over the stone floors, and the bank that had once been a symbol of wizarding wealth became a tomb. This is the moment that the Second Wizarding War's final days truly began to show their cost. The collateral damage was not just the soldiers, not just the heroes. It was the innocent, the bystanders, the creatures who had no part in the war but were caught in the blast. The goblins of Gringotts were not the first to die in this way, and they would not be the last. But there is a deeper lesson here. When Voldemort stopped being surgical, he revealed something about himself. He was not a master of death. He was a creature of fear. And when he was afraid, he killed indiscriminately. The goblins were not his targets. They were his victims. And their deaths, as brutal as they were nothing more than the price of his panic. This is the kind of killing that the series often glosses over. It is not a heroic kill. It is not a tragic kill. It is a senseless kill. and it reminds us that the line between murder and war is often drawn in blood that should never have been spilled. Now, as we move toward the final battles, we will see another face of this war, another killer who has been waiting in the shadows, his blade sharpened by years of combat. His name is Antonin Dolohov, and his kills are not the stuff of legend, they are the stuff of survival. And in the next chapter, we will see how the Battle of Hogwarts turned a veteran soldier into a butcher. The previous chapter ended with Voldemort's blind rage, the messy slaughter at Gringotts after the Horcrux heist. But that kind of chaos, that is the mark of a dark lord who has lost control. His true power, his real terror, always came from a more surgical hand, and no one in his inner circle wielded that surgical precision more effectively than Antonin Dolohov. You have heard the name. It is spoken in the same breath as the most dangerous Death Eaters, but his story is rarely told in full. He is the man responsible for the deaths of Remus Lupin and Fabian and Gideon Pruett. He is the one who brought the purple flame, a curse so unique it became his signature, his calling card, his lethal spell. He is not a fanatic like Bellatrix, not a schemer like Lucius Malfoy. He is something else entirely. He is the professional soldier of the Death Eater ranks. Think about the structure of Voldemort's army. You have the true believers, the ones who drink the ideology like poison. You have the cowards, the ones who follow out of fear. You have the ambitious, the ones who see a path to power. And then you have Dolohov. He is the one who does not need the speeches. He does not need the glory. He is a killer by trade, a man who has mastered the art of death as a craft. When the Ministry fell, when the First War raged, Dolohov was not just present. He was the one they sent to do the work that could not be undone. The Purple Flame Curse. That is the key to understanding him. It is not a common spell. Most dark wizards rely on the killing curse, the quick and clean end, but Dolohov's curse is different. It is a bolt of purple fire that does not simply kill. It maims, it burns, it destroys from the inside. It is a weapon of slow agony, and it is a curse that requires a specific kind of skill to cast, a specific kind of malice to sustain. He did not learn it from a book. He developed it, perfected it, made it his own. Now look at the deaths he caused. Remus Lupin, the werewolf who fought with everything he had, who already lost so much. Remus fell in the Battle of Hogwarts, and it was Dolohov who struck him down. Not in a duel of equals, not in a moment of grand strategy. It was a battle, a chaos of spells and screams, and Dolohov saw his target. He saw the man who had been a symbol of resistance, a symbol of the Order's stubborn hope, and he ended him with that purple flame. It was not personal, it was professional. Remus was a threat, and Dolohov eliminated him. Then there are the Pruett brothers, Fabian and Gideon. They were the ones Molly Weasley spoke of with such pain, the ones she remembered as brave. They were killed in the First War, and the story of their death is a story of being overwhelmed. 5 Death Eaters against 2 brothers. They fought, they died, and Dolohov was there. He was the one who delivered the final blow, the purple flame again, a signature of violence that left a mark on the family, on the history, on the memory of the Order. Why does Dolohov matter in this story of killers? Because he represents a tier that is easy to overlook. Voldemort is the architect, Bellatrix is the fanatic, but Dolohov is the soldier. He is the one who follows orders without question, who kills without hesitation, who does not need to be convinced. He is the one who makes the war possible. Without him, Voldemort's army would have been a collection of shouting madmen. With him, it was a disciplined force of death. He was captured after the First War, sent to Azkaban, and when he escaped, he did not waste time. He did not hide. He returned to the fight, returned to the killing. He was at the Department of Mysteries. He was at the Battle of the Tower. He was everywhere the fighting was thickest, and he was always casting that purple flame. So when you think of the Death Eaters, when you think of the killers who made the wizarding world bleed, do not forget Dolohov. He is the one who killed Remus. He is the one who killed the Pruetts. He is the one who made the purple flame a symbol of terror. He is the professional, the soldier, the man who turned murder into a career. And that brings us to a different kind of hunger. Not the hunger for power, not the hunger for glory, the hunger of a beast. The hunger of Fenrir Greyback. He is the one who does not kill for a cause. He kills because he wants to taste the flesh. He kills because he is hungry. And that is a story we will tell next. We ended the last chapter standing over the bodies left by Antonin Dolohov, the Death Eater, whose purple flame curse had cut down Remus Lupin and the Pruitt brothers. Dolohov was a killer who used magic like a sledgehammer, but his violence was still recognizably human. He chose his targets. He aimed. He killed. That distinction matters, because tonight we are turning to a predator who operates on a different frequency entirely. A creature who does not always kill for rage or ideology, but for something older, something biological. We are talking about Fenrir Greyback and the hunger that defines him. In werewolf lore, there is a critical difference between turning and killing, and Greyback blurs that line so deliberately that it becomes his signature horror. A werewolf in its wolf form, on the night of the full moon, will attack anything living. That attack can kill, but it can also infect. If the victim survives the bite, they become a werewolf themselves. For most of the wizarding world, that transformation is a curse, a tragedy. But for Fenrir Greyback, it is a recruitment strategy. He does not simply want to maul people to death. He wants to create more werewolves, to build an army of the infected, to drag as many souls as possible into his own state of perpetual hunger. When he bites a child like Remus Lupin, he is not trying to kill, he is trying to turn. The purpose is to spread the curse, to make the victim live with the monster inside them forever. That makes his violence uniquely sadistic. A killing curse is fast. It is over in an instant. Greyback's attacks are designed to leave the victim alive, scarred and cursed. That is worse than death for many, and Greyback knows it. He savors it. But the line between turning and killing is not always clean. Sometimes the attack itself is fatal, and nowhere is that ambiguity more hotly debated than in the death of Lavender Brown during the Battle of Hogwarts. In the film version, the scene is brutal and immediate. Greyback, in his half-human, half-wolf form, lunges at Lavender and drags her across the floor of the Great Hall. She screams. He tears at her, and then her body goes still. The implication is that he killed her. Many fans treat that as a confirmed on-screen kill for Greyback, but the book tells a different story. In the novel, Lavender is attacked by Greyback, but her fate is left deliberately ambiguous. She is wounded, thrown aside, and we are told she is twitching, motionless but not confirmed dead. Later, in a brief mention during the calm after the battle, we hear that Lavender's body was found, but the wording is careful. It says she was brought to the hospital wing, though her condition is never specified. The books deliberately leave the door open that she might have survived, though barely. The films close that door with a definitive visual. So what is the truth? For a strict canon kill count, Greyback's responsibility for Lavender Brown's death is uncertain. The film version is a clear kill. The book version is a maybe. And that ambiguity is exactly what makes Greyback's character so unsettling. He is not a clean killer. He is a mauler. He leaves survivors who wish they had died. And that brings us to why Greyback's kills, his confirmed kills and his near kills, are framed as more monstrous than the killing curse. The killing curse is the ultimate weapon of the Death Eaters. It is instantaneous. It leaves no mark. It is murder sanitized. But Fenrir Greyback's method is the opposite. He gets close. He uses his teeth. He savors the struggle. He does not want a clean death. He wants a bloody, screaming transformation or a slow, agonizing end. Even Voldemort, who commits mass murder without hesitation, looks down on Greyback. Voldemort values control, discipline, and purity. Greyback is a feral weapon that Voldemort uses but does not fully trust. Why? Because Greyback is not loyal to the cause. He is loyal to the hunger. He is a predator who cannot be tamed. That makes him a different kind of villain. Not a schemer, not a fanatic. Just a monster in human form, driven by an endless, ravenous appetite for violence. When Greyback fights, He is terrifying not because of his magical skill, but because he fights like an animal. He uses his claws and fangs. He does not care about rules or honor, and that primal horror is why his attack on Lavender, whether it killed her or not, resonates as one of the most disturbing moments in the battle. It is a reminder that some evils in the wizarding world are not about politics or power. They are about the simple base desire to rend and tear. And when that hunger is directed at a student, a young woman who was just a teenager a few months earlier, it hits a nerve that the killing curse never does. So where does that leave Greyback in our story of killers? He is not the most prolific. Voldemort's death toll dwarfs his, but he is perhaps the most psychologically scarring. He leaves behind victims who become monsters themselves, and he does it on purpose. That is a cruelty that goes beyond murder. It is a curse that lasts a lifetime. But there is one more figure in this war who stands at the opposite end of that spectrum. A character who used a blade not to spread a curse, but to break one. A hero who in the final moments of the battle brought down the last Horcrux and made Voldemort mortal again. That story is coming next chapter, when we explore the heroism of Neville Longbottom. For now, let Greyback's hunger settle in your mind, because the next chapter is about a different kind of strength entirely. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. There is a moment in the final battle of Hogwarts that is so perfectly constructed, it feels like the entire series had been building to it for 7 years. It is not Harry Potter who delivers the final blow to Voldemort's immortality. It is not a duel between the Dark Lord and the Chosen One. It is a boy standing in the middle of a ruined Great Hall with a sword in his hand and a snake at his feet. And that boy is Neville Longbottom. To understand why this moment matters, you have to go back to the very beginning. The first time we meet Neville, he is a boy who cannot find his toad. He is clumsy, forgetful, and terrified of nearly everything. His own grandmother sends him to school with a remembrel, a device that is meant to help him remember things, but which only serves to remind everyone else of what he cannot do. He is the boy who is sorted into Gryffindor only because he begged the sorting hat to put him there, and even then the hat hesitated. He is the boy who loses his password list, who falls off his broom, who is so afraid of his own potential that he cannot see the courage buried beneath the fear. But the transformation from a boy who loses his toad to a boy who wields the sword of Gryffindor is not a sudden one. It is a slow, painful, and deeply human process. It begins in the Department of Mysteries, when he stands up to his own worst fear. It continues through the battles of the Hogwarts year, when he becomes the leader of Dumbledore's army in Harry's absence. And it culminates in that moment, in the Great Hall, when he steps forward not as a hero, but as a boy who has finally learned what he is capable of. The beheading of Nagini is not just a kill, it is a necessary kill. A kill that breaks the cycle of immortality that Voldemort has spent decades constructing. Nagini is the last Horcrux, the final fragment of Voldemort's soul that is still tethered to the world. As long as she lives, Voldemort cannot die. As long as she lives, the war can never truly end. And so when Neville raises the sword of Gryffindor, he is not just killing a snake, he is cutting the final thread that binds Voldemort to life. There is a reason this moment is the most cinematically satisfying of the entire finale. It is not just because the stakes are high, or because the special effects are impressive. It is because the entire narrative has been pointing toward this moment and toward this character. Neville has spent 6 books being the underdog. He has spent 6 books being the boy who is always one step behind, who is always afraid, who is always the target of the joke. And then, in the final act, he becomes the one who saves the world. The sword itself is a symbol. It is Gryffindor's sword, the same sword that appeared to Harry in the Chamber of Secrets, the same sword that was used to destroy the other Horcruxes. But it appears to Neville in a moment of need, because he is worthy of it. He is a true Gryffindor, not because he is brave in the way Harry is brave, but because he is brave in the way that matters most. He is brave when he is afraid, and when he brings the sword down, when he severs Nagini's head from her body, the sound is not a triumphant one. It is a wet, heavy final sound. It is the sound of a story ending. It is the sound of a boy who has finally become the man he was always meant to be. The cycle of immortality is broken. Voldemort's soul is now mortal, vulnerable, and exposed. And in that moment, the war is not over, but it is finally winnable. This is what makes Neville's kill so different from the others we have discussed in this series. It is not a kill born of rage, or of revenge, or of cold calculation. It is a kill born of necessity, of duty, and of a love for the world that he is trying to save. It is the kill of a boy who has been told his entire life that he is not good enough, and who finally proves everyone wrong. And as the snake falls, as the great hall erupts into cheers and screams, and the chaos of a war that is finally turning, there is another figure moving through the crowd, a mother with a wand in her hand, and a fury in her eyes that no one has ever seen before. And that is where we will turn next, to the moment when Molly Weasley steps forward, and the protective fury of a mother becomes the most terrifying thing in the entire wizarding world. We ended the last chapter with Neville Longbottom, the boy who once lost his toad, standing in the ruins of Hogwarts, holding the sword of Gryffindor aloft. We talked about how that moment was not just a kill, but a breaking of the cycle. The beheading of Nagini was the final Horcrux destroyed, the last thread of Voldemort's immortality severed. But that battle, the Battle of Hogwarts, was not won by a single stroke. It was a tapestry of fury, of desperation, and of love. And in the midst of that tapestry, one of the most iconic, and arguably one of the most emotionally charged kills in the entire series, took place. It was not performed by a seasoned Auror, not by a member of the Order, and not by Harry himself. It was performed by a mother. Molly Weasley had spent the entire war on the sidelines. Not by choice, but by necessity. She had been the heart of the resistance, the keeper of the burrow, the woman who fed the army, who knitted the sweaters, who sent her children into danger with a kiss on the forehead and a packet of sandwiches. She had lost her brothers, Fabian and Gideon, to the Death Eaters in the First War. She had watched her son Charlie work with dragons, her son Bill get mauled by a werewolf, and her son Percy abandon the family in a fit of misguided ambition. She had seen the Weasley name become a target, and through it all, she had held the family together with sheer force of will. But when the final battle came, when the walls of Hogwarts were crumbling, and the Death Eaters were flooding the halls, Molly Weasley was not content to be a support system any longer. The duel with Bellatrix Lestrange is one of the most visceral, raw moments in the entire Harry Potter canon. It is not a technical duel, not a display of spellcraft, like Dumbledore versus Voldemort in the Ministry Atrium. It is a catfight, a brawl, a scream made manifest. Bellatrix had been laughing, taunting, throwing curses at the Weasley family, at Ginny in particular. She was toying with them, the way she had always toyed with her victims. And then she aimed a killing curse at Ginny, missing by inches. That was the moment the switch flipped. That was the moment Molly Weasley stopped being a housewife and became a force of nature. The words that came out of her mouth are some of the most famous in the entire franchise. "Not my daughter, you bitch." It is not a line that was written in a quiet room. It is a line that was torn from the very soul of a mother. It is the raw, unfiltered, primal scream of a woman who has spent years watching her children be threatened, watching her family be torn apart, watching the world burn, and finally, having the chance to do something about it. And in that moment, she did not just fight Bellatrix, she destroyed her. The magic of a mother's love is often discussed in the Harry Potter series as a protective force. It is the shield that saved Harry from Voldemort's killing curse in the graveyard. It is the power that makes the Dementors recoil. It is the ancient unspoken magic that is older than any spell. But Molly Weasley showed the world that a mother's love is not just a shield, it is a sword. It is an offensive weapon. It is the fury that rises when a child is threatened, and it is a fury that no amount of dark magic can match. When Molly Weasley faced Bellatrix Lestrange, she was not fighting for the Order. She was not fighting for the prophecy. She was not fighting for the greater good. She was fighting for her daughter, and that made her unstoppable. Why did Molly succeed where so many seasoned Aurors failed? Think about that for a moment. Bellatrix Lestrange had faced down the best of the best. She had fought Sirius Black. She had fought Alastor Moody. She had fought Kingsley Shacklebolt. She had fought Dumbledore himself. She was a prodigy of dark magic, a sadist who revelled in combat, a woman who had spent years in Azkaban and emerged more dangerous than ever. She was not an easy opponent. But Molly Weasley, a woman who had spent most of her adult life in the kitchen, who had never been an official member of the Order, who had never been a frontline soldier, beat her. She beat her in a straight fight. And she did it because Bellatrix was fighting for a cause. Bellatrix was fighting for a master, for an ideology, for a Dark Lord. Molly was fighting for her child. And that is a kind of power that cannot be taught, cannot be learned, cannot be replicated. It is the power of a mother who has had enough. The kill itself is not clean. It is not gentle, merciful death. Molly Weasley does not stun Bellatrix and hand her over to the authorities. She does not disarm her and wait for the Aurors to arrive. She hits her with a curse that hits her square in the chest. And Bellatrix Lestrange, the most dangerous Death Eater of the Second Wizarding War, falls to the ground, dead. And in that moment, the battle is not just won, it is transformed. The war against Voldemort had always been a war of symbols, of prophecies, of chosen ones. But in that moment, it became a war of families. It became a war of mothers. And it became a war that the Weasleys, the family that had lost so much, were finally going to win. That moment, that single kill, is often cited as one of the most satisfying in the entire series. And it is. But it is also a reminder of the cost. Molly Weasley, the woman who had spent the entire series feeding Harry, comforting Harry, treating Harry like her own son, had to become a killer. She had to take a life. And she did it without hesitation, without regret, and without a second thought. Because that is what love does. It makes you capable of things you never thought you were capable of. It makes you willing to do the unthinkable. And it makes you, in the end, the most dangerous person in the room. As we move forward, as we look at the final acts of this war, we have to look at the one who orchestrated it all. We have to look at the man who set these pieces in motion, who spent decades manipulating, who used death as a tool, and who, in the end, faced his own mortality. We have to look at the master of death himself and his final act. That is the story we are about to tell. We left off with Molly Weasley standing over Bellatrix Lestrange's body, her chest heaving, her wand still smoking. It was a moment that felt like the climax of the entire war. The mother's fury finally breaking through the darkness. But the Battle of Hogwarts was far from over. In fact, the most important death in the entire series was still waiting to happen. Harry Potter had just returned from the King's Cross limbo, that strange, white, empty place between life and death, where he had spoken to the ghost of Dumbledore, or the echo of Dumbledore, or whatever version of the headmaster existed in that space. He had seen the creature that was Voldemort's soul, the broken, shriveled thing under the bench. He had made a choice. He had chosen to come back, and now he was lying on the ground of the Great Hall, pretending to be dead, because that was the only way to end it. Voldemort had to believe that the last Horcrux was destroyed, that Harry was truly gone, so that the Dark Lord would stop hiding and finally face the real fight. But here is where the technicality of Voldemort's final death comes one of the most debated questions in all of Harry Potter lore. Did Harry kill Voldemort, or did the Elder Wand? The answer is not as simple as it seems. When Harry and Voldemort circle each other in the Great Hall, with the entire surviving population of Hogwarts watching, they cast their final spells. Harry uses Expelliarmus, the disarming charm, the same spell he has used 1,000 times. Voldemort casts Avada Kedavra, the killing curse, the same spell he has used 1,000 times. But the Elder Wand does not obey Voldemort. It never did, because the wand's true master was Harry, who had disarmed Draco Malfoy at Malfoy Manor, who had taken the wand from its rightful owner, and the Elder Wand, that ancient, fickle, powerful artifact, knew who its master was. So when Voldemort cast the killing curse, the wand refused to kill its master. Instead, it turned the curse back on itself. The green light hit Voldemort in the chest. He fell backward, his body hitting the floor, with a thud that echoed through the hall, and then he was dead. Not just dead, but truly, finally, completely dead. His body lay there, a shell, a husk, a mortal corpse that would never move again. So did Harry kill him? Technically, no. Harry did not cast a lethal spell. He cast a disarming charm. The Elder Wand killed Voldemort by refusing to obey him. But that is a legalistic answer, a wand law answer, a technicality. The real answer is that Harry caused Voldemort's death. He was the instrument, the catalyst, the reason the curse rebounded. And here is the poetic justice of it. The curse rebounded for the second and final time. The first time was in Godric's Hollow, when Voldemort tried to kill a baby, and the curse turned back on him, destroying his body, sending his soul into exile. That was the first rebounding. That was the beginning of his downfall. The second time was in the Great Hall of Hogwarts, when Voldemort tried to kill a 17-year-old boy, and the curse turned back on him again. But this time there was no Horcrux to save him. This time there was no soul fragment to cling to. This time he died as a man, a mortal man, a man who had spent his entire life trying to cheat death, only to be killed by his own weapon. And that is the deepest irony of Voldemort's story. He who sought to master death, who created Horcruxes, who split his soul 7 times, who believed he was above the rules of mortality, died because of a wand he did not understand, a wand he did not truly own. So when we ask the question of who killed Voldemort, the answer is complicated. Harry Potter killed him, in the sense that he was the one who stood against him, who faced him, who broke the cycle. But the Elder Wand killed him, in the sense that it was the weapon that delivered the final blow. And Voldemort killed himself, in the sense that his own curse, his own spell, his own hatred was what destroyed him. It is a death that fits the theme of the entire series. The Master of Death does not die by being killed. He dies by being outsmarted, outmaneuvered, outlasted. He dies by a boy who refused to use the killing curse, who refused to become what he hated, who chose to disarm instead of destroy. And that is the final act of the Master of Death. Not a murder, not a killing, but a victory that came not from violence, but from wisdom, from understanding that the Elder Wand was never meant to be a weapon of conquest, but a tool of fate. Now, as the dust settles on the Great Hall, as the bodies are counted, as the survivors begin to mourn, we have to turn our attention to a different kind of killer, a killer who never raised a wand in anger, who never cast a curse, who never intended to harm anyone, a killer whose hands are clean, but whose conscience is not. Because the next chapter in this story is about Albus Dumbledore and the indirect killings that haunt his legacy. We ended the last chapter standing in the ashes of the Battle of Hogwarts, watching Voldemort's body fall to the ground with a final, mundane thud. We asked whether Harry truly killed him, or if the Elder Wand's refusal to strike its master was the real executioner. That question, that technicality, is the kind of moral ambiguity that runs like a dark thread through the entire tapestry of this story. And it brings us to a figure who, more than any other, lived his life in that grey space between the grand plan and the personal cost. Tonight, we are looking at the man who orchestrated so much of that final victory, the man who guided Harry from the shadows, and the man whose hands are stained with the blood of those he claimed to protect. We are talking about Albus Dumbledore, the greater good. That phrase, which Dumbledore would later claim as a youthful folly, a dangerous philosophy he abandoned after the tragedy of his sister's death, is the key to understanding the indirect killings he has on his ledger. It is not a simple ledger of bodies, like Voldemort's. It is a ledger of consequences. Dumbledore did not cast the killing curse that ended his own sister's life. But he was there. He was in the thick of that three-way duel. At the top of the hill in Godric's Hollow, a duel between himself, his brother Aberforth, and his former best friend, Gellert Grindelwald. The spell that struck down Ariana Dumbledore, the young girl caught in the crossfire of a conflict she never wanted, was never definitively attributed to any one of the three wizards present. But Dumbledore carried the weight of it. He knew that his ambition, his hunger for power, and the greater good that he and Grindelwald had planned to impose upon the world had created the environment for that death. He had been the architect of the dream that led to the fight, and in that sense, he was an indirect killer of his own sister. This is the first layer of Dumbledore's blood-stained legacy. It is not a direct murder, but a causative death. He did not raise his wand to kill Ariana, but his actions, his alliances, his secretive nature, and his pursuit of a utopia that required the subjugation of the non-magical world. All of those things set the stage for her death. The blood on his hands from his youth is not the blood of a muggle-killing tyrant like his father Percival. It is the blood of a dreamer who let his dream consume the reality around him. And that pattern, that tendency to handle people, to move them like chess pieces on a board for a greater strategic outcome, would define the rest of his long life. This most clearly in his handling of Severus Snape. Dumbledore did not kill Snape with his own hands. That honour, if you can call it that, belongs to Nagini the snake, acting on Voldemort's direct command. But Dumbledore was the one who set the entire chain of events in motion. He was the one who, after the death of Lily Potter, recruited a broken, desperate young man and gave him a purpose. He gave Snape a mission that would last for nearly 2 decades. He asked Snape to become a double agent, to live a life of constant danger, constant betrayal, and constant emotional torture. And then, in the final act of that long game, Dumbledore asked Snape to kill him. When you examine Dumbledore's role in the deaths of those he handled, you have to look at the moment on the Astronomy Tower. Dumbledore did not simply ask Snape to be a spy. He asked Snape to be his executioner. He knew that the curse from Marvolo Gaunt's ring was killing him, that he had perhaps a year at most to live. He knew that Draco Malfoy had been tasked with his murder, and he saw the danger in that, not just to Draco's soul, but to the entire plan. So Dumbledore, in his final act of manipulation, arranged his own death. He told Snape that it had to be him, that it had to be Snape who cast the curse, because that would preserve Voldemort's trust in Snape, and that would be essential for the final phase of the war. But think about what that means for Snape. Dumbledore was not just a mentor to Snape, he was the only father figure the man had ever known. He was the one who gave him a home at Hogwarts, who gave him a purpose after the love of his life was lost. And Dumbledore asked him to take that father figure's life. He asked him to become a murderer, to live the rest of his life as a man who had killed his own commander. And when you look at the end of that story, when Voldemort decides that Snape is no longer useful when he sets Nagini on him in the Shrieking Shack, you have to ask, did Dumbledore's plan kill Snape? Dumbledore's strategy, his greater good philosophy, required Snape to remain in the service of the Dark Lord until the very end. It required him to be so close to Voldemort that when the time came, he would be in the line of fire. Dumbledore did not kill Snape with a spell, but he killed him with a plan. He used him up. And this is the uncomfortable truth about Albus Dumbledore. He is the most beloved figure in the wizarding world. The wise old wizard, the founder of the Order of the Phoenix. But he is also a man who, in the pursuit of a greater good, has a long history of allowing people to die. He allowed his own sister to die in a conflict he helped start. He allowed his brother to live a life of shame and isolation because of that same secret. He allowed a young man named Severus Snape to be twisted into a weapon that would eventually be broken. He allowed Sirius Black to rot in Azkaban for 12 years, even though he knew, or at least suspected, that Sirius was innocent. He allowed Harry Potter to be raised in a house of misery and neglect, because he believed that Harry would be safer there. even though that safety came at the cost of a childhood. When you look at the indirect killers in this series, Dumbledore is the most complex. He is not a villain, he is not a Voldemort, but he is a man who has made choices that have resulted in death. He has a philosophy, the greater good, that he tried to abandon, but that he never truly escaped. Every time he moved a piece on the board, he knew that piece might fall. He knew that Snape might die. He knew that Harry might have to die. He knew that the war would require sacrifices, and he made those sacrifices. He made them for others. So when we ask, who killed whom? In the Harry Potter series, we have to include Albus Dumbledore on the list, not as a direct murderer, but as a man who, in his pursuit of a better world, left a trail of bodies behind him. He is the man who killed his own sister's chance at a normal life. He is the man who killed his own brother's trust. He is the man who killed Severus Snape's soul, long before Nagini's fangs ever touched his throat. And he is the man who, in the end, asked Harry Potter to walk to his own death, to let Voldemort kill him, because that was the only way to win. That is the weight of Dumbledore's legacy. It is a legacy of love, of wisdom, and of a terrible, terrible price. And as we move forward, as we expand our view beyond the 7 core books and into the wider world of fantastic beasts, we will see that this price, this blood, is not just on Dumbledore's hands. It is on the hands of his old friend, Gellert Grindelwald, and it is on the hands of a young man named Credence Barebone, who we will meet in the next chapter, and whose story is the final tragic echo of the greater good that Albus Dumbledore once believed in. The Fantastic Beasts expansion is coming, and with it, a deeper look at the blood that was spilled before the war even began. We ended the last chapter with Albus Dumbledore, a man who spent a lifetime carrying the weight of decisions made in the name of a greater good. But that phrase, for the greater good, did not originate with him. It was a slogan, a justification, and a curse that belonged to another wizard entirely, one whose shadow stretches across the entire wizarding world, and whose body count is measured not in individual victims, but in the chaos of an international war. That wizard is Gellert Grindelwald. When we talk about killers in the Harry Potter universe, we often focus on the intimate, the personal, the murder in a graveyard, or the duel in a hallway. But Grindelwald represents something different. He is a figure of ideology, a dark wizard who did not just kill for power, but killed for a vision of what he believed the world should become. His rise to power was not a series of secret Horcrux creations. It was a public, terrifying campaign that spanned continents and left a trail of destruction that would eventually be measured in the thousands. The Fantastic Beasts films, for all their narrative complexity, give us a window into this era. A young Grindelwald, charismatic and persuasive, weaving a web of followers who believe in his cause. But the cause itself is built on a foundation of death. He does not just want to overthrow the statute of secrecy. He wants to establish a new world order where wizards rule over muggles, and he is willing to burn down any city, any family, any life that stands in his way. His international body count is not a list of names we can tick off. It is a statistic of a war. A number that includes the casualties of battles he orchestrated, the deaths of those who resisted him, and the countless innocents caught in the crossfire of his ambition. But the most chilling aspect of Grindelwald is not the number of deaths he caused, it is the way he justified them. The phrase, "for the greater good," was his mantra, and it allowed his followers to believe that murder was not murder. It was a necessary sacrifice. It was a step toward a better future. This is the same philosophy that Albus Dumbledore, in his youth, was tempted by. And it is the same philosophy that led to one of the most tragic and deeply personal deaths in the entire wizarding world. A death that recontextualizes everything we think we know about the older generation of killers. That death belongs to Leta Lestrange. Now, Leta Lestrange is a name that might not be familiar to those who only know the core Harry Potter books. She is a character from the Fantastic Beasts series, and her story is one of the most heartbreaking examples of how the line between accident and murder can be impossibly thin. Leta was not a killer by nature. She was not a Death Eater. She was not a dark wizard. She was a young woman haunted by a childhood trauma. A trauma that she carried with her for the rest of her life. When Leta was a child, she had a baby brother, a tiny, innocent infant, and in a moment of childish frustration, in a moment of anger that she could not control, she did something that no child should ever have to live with. She accidentally killed him. The details are murky, but the implication is clear. She was not a monster. She was a child who made a terrible, irreversible mistake. But that mistake defined her. It shaped her entire identity. It made her believe that she was cursed, that she was dangerous, that she was the kind of person who could bring death into a room simply by existing. This is where the Fantastic Beasts expansion recontextualizes the killer status of the older generation. In the main Harry Potter series, characters like Bellatrix Lestrange, who are unapologetic murderers, they kill for pleasure, for ideology, for the sheer joy of destruction. But Leta Lestrange, her ancestor, is the opposite. She is a killer who never wanted to kill, who spent her entire life trying to atone for a sin she could never undo. And when she finally dies, it is not in a duel. It is not in a moment of vengeance. She sacrifices herself, not to save the world, but to save the man she loved, and to protect the secrets that could have destroyed everything. Her death is a reminder that, in the wizarding world, killing is not always a choice. Sometimes it is a mistake, sometimes it is a burden, and sometimes it is the only way to break a cycle of pain that has been passed down through generations. But Leta Lestrange is not the only figure in the Fantastic Beasts era whose death count is complicated. We have to look at the broader war, the international conflict that Grindelwald ignited. And when we look at that war, we start to see that the line between a confirmed kill and an implied death becomes even more blurred. The films, the books, the video games, they all offer different versions of the same story. And that brings us to a question that is worth asking as we close this chapter. What about the deaths that happen outside of the core canon? What about the video games, the alternate timelines, the non-canonical stories that expand the universe in ways that the books never intended? Because if we are going to be honest about every character that has killed somebody, we cannot ignore the outliers. In the next chapter, we will explore those video game and non-canon outliers. We will look at the deaths that happen in the realm of interactive fiction, where a player's choice can mean the difference between life and death. And we will ask the question that every fan must eventually face. Where do we draw the line? Because in a world as vast as the wizarding world, every story has a killer, and every killer has a story. We have spent the last several chapters firmly rooted in the canon of the books and the films. We have traced the bloodlines of the Death Eaters, the sacrificial deaths of the heroes, and the calculated murders of the master manipulators. But the wizarding world is not a static universe. It breathes, it expands, and it sometimes, quite controversially, allows you to step into its past and pull the trigger yourself. This brings us to a very particular problem, a fracture in the lore that many fans have to reconcile in their own minds. It is the problem of the video game, and specifically, the problem of Hogwarts Legacy. If you have played this game, and many of you have, you know exactly what I am talking about. You are a student at Hogwarts in the 1800s, a new 5th year with a rare and ancient connection to a form of magic that has been dormant for centuries. You are thrust into a conflict with goblins, with dark wizards, and with a rising tide of magical rebellion. And you, the player character, are given a body count that would make even the most hardened Death Eater pause for a moment. The game is beautiful, the world is immersive, and the combat is fluid, but the narrative disconnect is staggering. In the core Harry Potter story, the highest confirmed kill count belongs to Lord Voldemort himself. He is a mass murderer, a being who has killed dozens upon dozens of people across multiple decades of war. He is the anchor of the entire death toll. But in Hogwarts Legacy, you, a teenage student, are responsible for a number of deaths that, if you were to count them honestly, would likely surpass the on-screen kills of the Dark Lord himself. And this is not an exaggeration. The game presents you with a combat system where you are constantly casting spells that disintegrate, shatter, and obliterate your enemies. You are not just knocking them unconscious, you are in many cases killing them. The game tries to soften this. It gives you a non-lethal option, the petrifying spell, which turns enemies to stone. But even that is a form of death, a freezing of the body that in the lore of the world is a dark and dangerous magic. And then there is the ancient magic. This is the core of the problem. The ancient magic that you, as the protagonist, are uniquely gifted to wield. It is not a spell from a textbook. It is not a charm you learn in charms class. It is a raw, primal force of destruction that you pull from the earth itself. When you use this ancient magic, you are not casting a simple, stunning spell. You are pulling a person into the ground, or you are tearing them apart with a burst of concentrated energy that leaves nothing behind. The kills in Hogwarts Legacy are some of the most brutal in the entire franchise. They are not the clean, almost elegant deaths of the Avada Kedavra curse. They are violent, explosive, and visceral. You see bandits and dark wizards literally disintegrate into dust. You see them crushed under pillars of stone that you have ripped from the ground with a gesture, and the game never, not once, acknowledges this. The narrative treats you as a hero, a saviour of the school, a protector of the innocent, but your hands are covered in more blood than almost any character in the core 7 books. This is where we must draw a very clear line. We must distinguish between gameplay mechanics and narrative lore. The game is a video game. It is designed to be fun, to be engaging, to give you a sense of power and progression. The developers at Avalanche Software built a combat system that is satisfying to use. They wanted you to feel like a powerful wizard. And in that pursuit, they created a system where you are, by the very nature of the medium, killing hundreds of enemies. But the story itself, the narrative of the game, does not treat these as murders. The game does not have a morality system that tracks your kills. It does not have a moment where a character looks at you and says, "You have killed how many people?" The game pretends that these deaths are not happening, and this is the core of the problem. The Harry Potter franchise has always been careful about death. Even in the darkest moments of the books, death is treated with weight. When Cedric Diggory dies, the entire world stops. When Sirius Black falls through the veil, the grief is palpable. When Dumbledore is killed, the entire school mourns. But in Hogwarts Legacy, you are killing bandits, goblins, and dark wizards by the dozen, and the game just moves on. The game just gives you a new quest. The game just lets you walk back to the castle and attend a class on potions. This creates a strange dissonance for anyone who is deeply invested in the lore. If you were to count the kills of the Hogwarts Legacy protagonist, using the same standards we have used for every other character in this series, you would have to put them at the very top of the list. They would be above Voldemort. They would be above Bellatrix. They would be above any single character in the entire franchise. And that is a problem, because that character is not a villain. That character is not a dark wizard. That character is a student, a 5th year, who is supposed to be learning about the history of magic and the importance of protecting the wizarding world. But the game is not canon. This is the most important distinction we can make. The events of Hogwarts Legacy are not part of the main timeline of the books. They are not referenced in the films. They are not part of the official story that J.K. Rowling wrote. They are a separate, self-contained universe that exists in the world of video games. And in that universe, the rules are different. The narrative is different. The game is not trying to tell a story out the weight of murder. It is trying to tell a story about a young wizard discovering their power and fighting against a rising threat. But that does not mean we can ignore it. The game is still a part of the wizarding world. It is still a story that millions of people have played and experienced. And it is a story that, if you look at it closely, has one of the most shocking kill counts in the entire franchise. The ancient magic kills are not just brutal, they are personal. They are a direct expression of the protagonist's unique power, and that power is used over and over again to end the lives of anyone who stands in the way. This is the chapter of the outliers. This is the chapter where we have to step back from the strict canon of the books and the films and look at the wider world of the franchise. It is a world that includes video games, that includes alternate timelines, that includes stories that were written for a different medium and a different audience. And in that world, the protagonist of Hogwarts Legacy is a killer, a very, very prolific killer. But the question remains, does that count? Does that matter? If you are a fan who only cares about the core 7 books, then the answer is no. The answer is that the game is a fun, immersive experience, but it is not part of the story that matters. But if you are a fan who wants to understand the full scope of the wizarding world, who wants to see every corner of this universe, then you have to acknowledge that the 1800s were a very, very violent time. And this brings us to the final chapter of this series, the chapter that looks at the unconfirmed and the missing, the characters who are suspected of having killed, but for whom we have no definitive proof, the characters who are implied to have blood on their hands, but whose stories are left to the imagination, the characters who exist in the shadows of the law, waiting for someone to ask the question. And that question is coming. We ended last time in the strange territory of video game canon, where a student at Hogwarts in the 1800s could rack up a body count that would make Voldemort pause. That was a necessary detour because it highlights a fundamental truth about this series. The line between confirmed and unconfirmed is often drawn in sand, not stone. Tonight, we turn our attention to the characters who exist in that grey area, the ones who are whispered about, the ones whose hands we suspect are stained, but for whom the evidence is maddeningly incomplete. Let's start with a name that has haunted this discussion from the very beginning. Lucius Malfoy. You see him in the films, a pillar of pure-blood arrogance, always standing just behind Voldemort, always ready with a sneer or a threat. He's the face of the old guard, the man who tried to open the Chamber of Secrets by slipping a diary into Ginny Weasley's cauldron. But here's the strange, almost uncomfortable truth. When you scan the books and the films, looking for a moment where Lucius Malfoy personally, directly ends a life with his own hands or his own spell, you come up empty. He is a master of the indirect. He commands, he manipulates, he hands weapons to children. He is the architect of chaos, but rarely the executioner. The closest we get to a confirmed on-screen kill from him is the death of the basilisk, and even that is a stretch. It was a creature, a monster, but did he kill it? No, Harry did. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a character who is undeniably evil, undeniably dangerous, but who has a confirmed kill count that by the strictest measure is a big fat 0. It's a paradox that makes you question the very nature of evil in this world. Is the man who gives the order just as guilty as the man who pulls the trigger? The wizarding world seems to say yes, but the kill count lists often say no. This brings us to the mystery of Regulus Black. The name is spoken in hushed tones, a ghost in the family tree of the most noble and ancient house of Black. He was a Death Eater, a young man who fell for Voldemort's promises of power and purity. He took the mark he served. He was, by all accounts, a true believer. But then, something happened. He saw the truth. He saw what Voldemort did to his house elf, creature. He saw the cruelty, the casual disregard for life that even the most loyal followers were expected to accept. And Regulus, in a moment of profound and terrifying clarity, decided to act. He didn't fight in a battle. He didn't duel in a hallway. He went to the cave, the one on the rocky shore where the sea is cold and black. He took the locket, the real Horcrux, and he left a fake in its place. And then he was dragged into the water by the Inferi. He was drowned. He died not at Voldemort's hand, but by the hand of his own creation. The question that haunts this chapter is this: did Regulus Black kill anyone? He was a Death Eater. He was for a time a servant of the Dark Lord. But did he ever personally take a life? The books are silent. We know he was in the inner circle, we know he was trusted, but we have no confirmed on-screen kill, no moment where his wand is raised and a life ends. He is the ultimate unconfirmed. A hero, yes, but a hero whose hands may be just as clean as Lucius Malfoy's, or just as dirty. We simply don't know. And then there are the Inferi themselves. The word means the undead, the animated corpses. They are the army Voldemort left in that lake, a silent, waiting horde of bodies. They are not alive, but they are not truly dead either. They are a weapon. And when we think about who kills them, we have to think about the nature of the kill. Harry uses fire, the spell of blue flame, to drive them back. He burns them. He destroys them. Is that a kill? It is a destruction of a body that was already dead. It is a strange liminal space in the lore. The Inferi are the ultimate symbol of the unconfirmed. They are the bodies of people who were killed, probably by Voldemort or his followers, and then reanimated. Their original deaths are lost to history. Their second death, the one at the hands of Harry or the fire, is a technicality. It's a perfect example of why this topic is so difficult. We are left with a list of names that are famous for their evil, but who have no confirmed body count. Lucius Malfoy, Regulus Black, even characters like Fenrir Greyback, who is feared as a monster, but whose confirmed on-screen kills are limited to one very specific, very debated moment with Lavender Brown. It makes you wonder, why do some of the most evil characters have the lowest confirmed kill counts? Is it because the series is a story of redemption and choice? Or is it because the true evil is not in the act of killing, but in the act of ordering it, of enabling it, of standing by while it happens? The wizarding world is a place where the line between guilt and innocence is not always drawn by the body count. It is drawn by the heart. And as we move toward the final chapter of this journey, we will have to face the numbers. We will have to look at the raw data, the statistical breakdown of the dead. We will have to ask ourselves, what does a kill count really mean? And more importantly, what does it say about the people who are left standing when the dust settles? That is the question we will answer next. In our last chapter, we wrestled with the ghosts of the unconfirmed, the characters like Lucius Malfoy, whose hands we never quite saw stained, and the tragic mystery of Regulus Black, whose death was more a sacrifice than a murder. That chapter left us with a question that hangs over the entire wizarding world. When does a kill count as a kill? And more importantly, who actually has the blood on their hands? Tonight, we are going to answer that question with cold, hard numbers. We are going to build the definitive ranking of the top 10 killers in the Harry Potter series, based only on confirmed, named character kills. And as we do, we will discover something far more unsettling than a simple body count. We will see how the series itself uses the act of murder to define its own maturity, and how the line between good and evil is not nearly as clean as we once believed. To begin this ranking, we have to start with the source of nearly every death in the story. Lord Voldemort is not just the top of this list. He is the reason the list exists at all. His confirmed kills stretch across decades. From the early days of his Horcrux creation to the final battle, he personally murdered his father and grandparents, framing his uncle Morphin for the crime. He killed the Riddle housekeeper, and then he moved on to the wizarding world, murdering Hepzibah Smith to steal Hufflepuff's cup. He killed a muggle man named Frank Bryce, and he killed the old wandmaker Gregorovitch. He killed Gellert Grindelwald in his prison cell. He killed Bertha Yorkins. He killed the family of the boy who tried to stop him, James and Lily Potter. And then, in the graveyard, he ordered the death of Cedric Diggory. That is not even a full accounting. Voldemort's total, when you include every named victim in the books and films, is easily in the dozens. But here is the key. Every single one of those deaths was a tool. He killed to split his soul. He killed to gain power. He killed to send a message. He is the purest example of what the series considers evil. Now, we move to the second most prolific killer in the main saga, and this one might surprise you. Bellatrix Lestrange. Her confirmed named kills are fewer, but they are devastating. She murdered Sirius Black, her own cousin, in the Department of Mysteries. She threw the knife that killed Dobby at Malfoy Manor, and she is responsible for the deaths of countless unnamed Order members during the First and Second Wars. But her most important kill, the one that defines her, is the one she never got to make. She was seconds away from killing Ginny Weasley when Molly Weasley stepped in. Bellatrix is the only Death Eater truly enjoying the act of murder. She laughs when she kills. She taunts. She is the face of ideological violence, and that makes her the most dangerous kind of killer. Third on our list is Peter Pettigrew, and this is where the ranking gets complicated. Wormtail has only one confirmed named kill, Cedric Diggory, but that single act of murder is the most consequential in the entire series. It is the moment the story stops being a school fantasy. It is the moment Voldemort returns, and it is the moment we realise that even the cowards can kill. Pettigrew did not just murder a boy, he murdered the innocents of the series. He is the lowest on the list by body count, but he is the highest on the list by narrative impact. Fourth is Severus Snape. His only confirmed kill is Albus Dumbledore, and that death is the most morally complicated in the entire franchise. We know now that it was a mercy killing, a planned death to protect Draco Malfoy's soul and to keep Snape's cover, but the act itself is still murder. Snape stood on the astronomy tower and cast the spell that ended the life of the most powerful wizard in the world, and that is the point. The series does not let you off the hook. It does not say, well, he had a good reason. It says he still killed. Snape is the first character on our list who is technically a good guy. And that is where the ratio starts to get interesting. Fifth is Nagini. She is not a person, but she's a character. She is Voldemort's snake, and she has one confirmed named kill, Severus Snape. She attacks him in the Shrieking Shack, and he bleeds out in the boathouse. It is one of the most shocking deaths in the final act, and it is the moment Voldemort loses his last Horcrux. Nagini is a weapon, but she is also a living thing. She is the line between a tool and a murderer. Sixth is Harry Potter. This is where the debate gets loud. Harry has one confirmed kill that most fans accept, Quirinus Quirrell, the man who was possessed by Voldemort, who burned to death from the touch of Harry's skin. It is an indirect kill, but it is a kill. Harry also destroys the basilisk and the diary, but those are not human deaths. And his final battle with Voldemort is not a kill, it is a rebounding curse. So Harry sits at one confirmed named kill. But here is the twist. He is the only character on this list who never wanted to kill. He is the hero, and he still has blood on his hands. That is the maturity of the series. Seventh is Neville Longbottom. He has one kill, and it is the most heroic in the entire story. He beheads Nagini with the sword of Gryffindor. That is not just a kill, it is the destruction of the final Horcrux. It is the moment the underdog becomes the champion. Neville is the purest example of a good character taking a life, and the series frames it as a victory. Eighth is Molly Weasley. She has one kill, Bellatrix Lestrange, and it is the most emotionally satisfying death in the series. She kills the woman who threatened her daughter. She kills the woman who laughed at her son's death, and she does it with a single curse. Molly is the mother, and she is the killer. Ninth is Percival Dumbledore. He killed 3 muggles who attacked his daughter, Ariana. He went to Azkaban for life. His kill is the reason Albus Dumbledore grew up in shame. It is the backstory that shapes the entire Dumbledore family. And 10th is a character we rarely discuss, Barty Crouch Jr. He has at least 2 confirmed kills, but the canon is messy. He killed his own father, and he killed the real Mad-Eye Moody. He's a killer, but he is often left off the list because his deaths are less clear. Now let us look at the ratio. Out of these 10, 7 are evil. Voldemort, Bellatrix, Pettigrew, Nagini, Barty Crouch and Percival Dumbledore, who is a grey area. 3 are good, Harry, Neville and Molly, and 1 is morally ambiguous, Snape. That is a ratio of roughly 70% evil to 30% good. But here is the truth. The series uses murder to define its maturity. The early books are about adventure. The later books are about the cost of victory. Every single one of these characters, from the hero to the villain, has to live with what they did, and that is what makes the wizarding world feel real. As we close this chapter, we are left with a question that will haunt us into the next. What happens to the legacy of the fallen? Not just the ones who were killed, but the ones who did the killing. How does the world remember a hero who took a life? How does it forget a villain who took dozens? That is the story we are about to tell. In our next chapter, we will explore the final resting place of every soul we have discussed, and we will ask the question that no one in the wizarding world wants us to answer. Who gets to be remembered? And who gets to be forgotten? That is the legacy of the fallen. We've spent this entire series tracing the threads of violence through the wizarding world. We've looked at the hands that held the wands, the curses that flew, and the lives that ended. We've counted the kills, debated the definitions, and separated the murderers from the soldiers. But now, as we reach the final chapter, we have to step back from the list. We have to ask ourselves what the list actually means. Because the tally of names, the body count, the hierarchy of killers, it isn't just a morbid curiosity, it is a map. It is a map of the cost of the wizarding wars, and it is a map that shapes our entire understanding of redemption in the Potterverse. The cost of the wizarding wars is not a number you can add up on a chalkboard. It is not the sum of Voldemort's victims, though that number is staggering. It is not the total of those who fell in the Battle of Hogwarts, though that is a wound that never fully heals. The true cost is the way the war reshaped the very definition of a life. It is the way it forced good people to become killers. It is the way it made the line between hero and murderer so thin that you could only see it in the quiet moments, in the aftermath, when the dust and the survivors were left to live with what they had done. Think about the characters we have covered. Think about the ones who sit on the side of the angels. Molly Weasley. She is the heart of the series. The mother who feeds an army, who knits sweaters with love, who shelters every lost child who comes through her door. And yet, in the final battle, she kills Bellatrix Lestrange. She does not disarm her. She does not capture her. She kills her, and the moment is celebrated. It is one of the most emotionally satisfying moments in the entire series. A mother defending her daughter, unleashing a fury that the books had never shown her capable of. But that is the cost. That is the price of the war. It took the gentlest soul in the series, and it made her a killer. Then there is Neville Longbottom, the boy who could not remember his passwords, the boy who was terrified of his own grandmother, the boy who grew up in the shadow of his parents' torture. And in the end, he is the one who beheads Nagini. He is the one who destroys the final Horcrux. He is the one who makes Voldemort mortal again. It is a heroic kill, a triumphant kill, a kill that saves the world, but it is still a kill. And Neville, the boy who was once a comic relief character, has to live with that. He has to live with the memory of swinging a sword and ending a life. Even if that life was a snake, even if that life was a piece of a monster's soul, the cost is that the war takes your innocence, and it does not give it back. And then there is Harry. Harry Potter, the boy who lived, the chosen one, the hero. His first kill is Quirinus Quirrell. It happens when he is 11 years old. He does not mean to do it. He does not even understand what is happening. But Quirrell dies because he touches Harry. He dies because the protective magic that Lily Potter left in her son's blood is so powerful, so pure, that it burns the life out of a man who is possessed by Voldemort. And Harry has to carry that. He has to carry the knowledge that he killed someone, even if it was an accident, even if it was self-defense. The cost is that the weight of that first death never leaves him. It shapes every decision he makes. It makes him hesitate. It makes him refuse to use the killing curse. It makes him, in the final duel, try to disarm Voldemort instead of destroy him. The cost is that Harry Potter, the hero, becomes a killer before he is old enough to understand what that word means. This is where the killer's list becomes something more than a ranking. It becomes a lens through which the entire moral structure of the wizarding world, because the list does not just separate the villains from the heroes. It separates the types of killers. It separates the ones who kill for power from the ones who kill for protection. It separates the ones who kill with joy from the ones who kill with grief. Look at Bellatrix Lestrange. She kills Sirius Black. She kills Dobby. She kills countless unnamed Order members and Resistance fighters. And she does it with a laugh. She does it with a smile. She is not a reluctant killer. She is not a soldier who is forced into battle. She is a sadist. She is an assassin. She is an ideologue. She believes in the purity of blood. And she believes that murder is the only way to achieve that purity. Her kills are personal. They are ideological. They are a celebration of her own power. Now look at Severus Snape. He kills Albus Dumbledore. It is one of the most shocking moments in the series. The moment when the trusted professor, the man who has been protecting Harry for years, raises his wand and casts the killing curse. And the entire fandom, for a year, believes that Snape is a traitor. They believe that he has finally shown his true colours. But then the truth comes out. The truth is that Dumbledore was already dying. The truth is that Dumbledore was cursed by the ring, and he had only months to live. The truth is that Dumbledore asked Snape to do it. He asked Snape to kill him, to protect Draco Malfoy's soul, to protect Snape's cover, to ensure that Voldemort would trust the spy until the very end. Snape's kill is not a murder. It is a mercy. It is a sacrifice. It is a man who has spent his entire life in the grey area between good and evil, doing the one thing that will damn him forever in the eyes of the world, because it is the only way to save the world. And that is the difference. That is the nuance that the killer's list forces us to see. Bellatrix kills because she wants to. Snape kills because he has to. And the list does not distinguish between those two things. It just records the fact that a life ended. This is where we have to talk about redemption, because the Potterverse is full of characters who do terrible things, and then somehow find a way to be remembered as something other than monsters. The killer's list is the ultimate test of that redemption. It is the question that every character has to answer. Can you kill and still be good? Can you take a life and still be worthy of love? The answer in the wizarding world is complicated. It is not a simple yes or no. It is a sliding scale. It is a matter of intent. It is a matter of context. It is a matter of what you do after the kill. Look at Peter Pettigrew. He kills Cedric Diggory. He does it on Voldemort's orders. He does it in the graveyard, in the moment of Voldemort's resurrection. And he is a coward. He is a rat. He is a man who has spent 12 years hiding from his own betrayal. And in the end, when he has a chance to redeem himself, when he hesitates to kill Harry, when his silver hand turns on him and strangles him, he dies. He dies as a traitor. He dies as a coward. He dies as a man who never found the courage to be good. His kill is not redeemed. It is not forgiven. It is the final mark on a life that was defined by fear. But then there is Percival Dumbledore. He kills 3 muggles. He kills them because they attacked his daughter. He kills them because they hurt Ariana, and he is sent to Azkaban for life. He is a murderer. He is a criminal. But his story is not told as a warning. It is told as a tragedy. It is told as the reason that Albus Dumbledore, the greatest wizard of his age, spent his entire life trying to atone for his father's sins. Percival's kill is not redeemed, but it is understood. It is the moment that broke a family. It is the moment that shaped a man. And it is the moment that reminds us that even the most righteous anger can lead to a life in prison. And then there is Nagini. She is a snake. She is a Horcrux. She is a weapon. She kills Severus Snape on Voldemort's orders. And she is not a character. She is not a person. She is a tool. But her kill is one of the most important in the series. It is the kill that breaks Voldemort's inner circle. It is the kill that leaves Voldemort alone, desperate and vulnerable. And it is the kill that, in a way, sets the stage for Neville's final victory. Because when Nagini is killed, when Neville beheads her, the last Horcrux is destroyed, and Voldemort becomes mortal, and the war ends. This is the final tally. This is the tribute to every character who did not make it to the epilogue. Because the epilogue, the scene on platform 9 3/4, 19 years later, is a scene of peace. It is a scene of children going to school. It is a scene of families who are whole. But that peace is built on the graves of the fallen. It is built on the lives that were lost. And it is built on the lives that were taken. Think about the characters who are not in that epilogue. Think about Sirius Black. He is killed by Bellatrix Lestrange. He falls through the veil in the Department of Mysteries. He is a man who spent 12 years in Azkaban, who escaped, who fought for the Order, who loved Harry like a son, and he is gone. He is not there to see Harry's children. He is not there to see Harry become a father. He is a victim of the war, and his death is a wound that never fully heals. Think about Dobby. He is killed by Bellatrix Lestrange. He is a free elf. He is a hero. He is the one who saves Harry, Ron, and Hermione from Malfoy Manor, and he dies in Harry's arms on a beach with a knife in his chest. He is not there for the epilogue. He is not there to see the world he helped save. He is a casualty of the war, and his death is one of the most heartbreaking in the entire series. Think about Cedric Diggory. He is killed by Peter Pettigrew. He is a 17-year-old boy. He is a champion. He is a symbol of everything that is good about the Triwizard Tournament, and he is murdered in a graveyard for no reason other than that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He is not there for the epilogue. He is not there to grow up. He is not there to become an Auror or a father or a husband. He is a reminder that the war does not care about age. It does not care about potential. It does not care about how much you have left to give. And think about Albus Dumbledore. He is killed by Severus Snape. He is the greatest wizard of his age. He is the leader of the Order. He is the man who has been guiding Harry since the moment he was born. And he is dead. He is not there to see the final victory. He is not there to see Voldemort fall. He is not there to see the world he spent his entire life trying to protect. He is a victim of his own plan, a sacrifice that he chose to make, a death that he knew was coming, and his absence is the silence that hangs over the entire final battle. The epilogue is a scene of joy, but is also a scene of absence. It is a scene of the people who are not there, and the killer's list is the reason they are not there. It is the reason that the world is scarred. It is the reason that the children who go to Hogwarts in 19 years will never know the terror of the war, but they will also never know the people who died to give them that peace. This is where the list becomes a tribute. It is not a celebration of violence. It is not a ranking of who is the most powerful. It is a record. It is a record of every life that was taken in the name of a cause. It is a record of every hand that was forced to act. It is a record of every moment where the line between good and evil was crossed, and the person on the other side had to live with the consequences. Because the wizarding world is not a fairy tale. It is not a story where the good guys never kill. It is a story where the good guys kill, and they have to find a way to live with it. It is a story where the bad guys kill, and they are punished for it. It is a story where the line is not always clear, and the only thing that separates a hero from a murderer is the reason they did it. And that is the legacy of the fallen. It is not just the list of names. It is not just the body count. It is the understanding that every kill, every death, every life that ended is a story. It is a story of a person who was loved. It is a story of a person who was hated. It is a story of a person who had a future and a past and a reason for being. And when we look at the list, when the names of Voldemort, Bellatrix, Pettigrew, Snape, Harry, Neville, Molly, and all the others, we are not just seeing killers. We are seeing the cost of the war. We are seeing the price of peace. We are seeing the weight that every survivor carries. Because the epilogue is not the end. The epilogue is the beginning of the next generation. It is the beginning of a world that has to heal. It is the beginning of a world that has to remember. And the killer's list, the legacy of the fallen, is the reminder that the healing is never complete. It is the reminder that the scars are always there. It is the reminder that the cost of the wizarding wars is not measured in numbers. It is measured in the lives that were lost, and the lives that were changed, and the lives that were forced to become killers. And that is the final thought. That is the tribute to every character who did not make it to the epilogue, to every character who died so that others could live, to every character who killed, and every character who was killed. Their legacy is not a list. Their legacy is the world they left behind. A world that is scarred, but a world that is free. A world that is broken, but a world that is healing. A world that is, in the end, worth the cost. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.